to meet you.
What do you prefer? You've got so many pronouns there.
Oh, we're live.
The Bluff Council.
This is a cold open right now.
I like the cold open.
I like the cold open too.
It's a cold open. Yeah. Hello, chat.
Hey, guys.
welcome to the conversation we were having without you.
We were having it backstage, now we're having it front of stage.
Oh, you're right. We're live. Oh my God, you're coherent.
We like to catch people off guard.
Boom, we're here. No countdown, no nothing.
Final countdown.
Don't get us demonetized. That's a good cover.
You know what?
Everybody.
I did a cover of a song and I sang it, and YouTube could not recognize what the song was. That's how badly I sang it.
Ooh, they're really good at that too.
They are very good at that.
Yeah, I've done a cover and got demonetized on a private link. So
wow,
I had to appeal on my second channel. I had to appeal to get that thing monetized because because I'd only just started. There were a couple of videos on it which were film stuff and 3 cover songs, all of which obviously have the copyright problem. And so when I went to get it monetized, they said, no, your channel is primarily just like, it's not creating stuff. You don't have original content, so we can't monetize you unless you appeal. So you have to make a video to appeal for us. So I had to do that, and I was like, yeah, no, I mean, A, they're my songs, which you can tell because I keep going out of tune and I can't play the thing properly. And B, no, I'm going to be making stuff on this channel eventually. It's just weird that it hit 1,000 subs before I'd actually done anything with it.
That's the same thing that happened on my second channel. I have like one video that I uploaded, but I made it a year ago, and that's the only video that's on it, and there's like 1.2 thousand subs.
Well, the most frustrating thing was I'm part of a comedy group where I was called The Frantics, and I played a song that I did with The Frantics that I wrote, and because it's on the Frantics channel, I got the system caught me and said, "No, we're taking your money away." Well, that's my song.
That's fine.
I wrote that. That's my song.
Hi, chat.
Hello,
welcome
everyone.
welcome to our conversation. Everyone here who's watching knows Paul Chato.
That's
I certainly would hope
presumptuous
so.
of you at the very least.
I'm happy to be presumptuous in that situation. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
A pleasure to be joined.
And a member, one of 2, and the second one will be joining us from the Bluff Council. I don't know how you want me to pronounce your name, Ev Durant.
Ev Duran. You can say as someone that no one in the chat will know. I appreciate being here.
I have been enjoying the Bluff Council's channel for a few months now. They put out high quality, fantastic content. I employ everybody in the chat to go check them out after the stream or during the stream. Do whatever you want. You know, I don't control anybody, but all the same, fantastic content. You guys will really appreciate it. And the Bluff Council will too, I'm sure. But go over and check out their stuff. It's great.
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. But we have some stuff to get into. So first and foremost, let me check the title again of our video because I don't remember.
You're not introducing your final person?
He can talk for himself.
Okay.
Guys. But go ahead, Platoon. Tell everybody who you are.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. This is who I am. I'm a cartoon. What are we talking about today?
I want to get right into it. The thing that dropped last night, and there are actual multiple trailers that dropped in the past 24 hours. But first and foremost would be the Secret Invasion trailer.
Yes.
Did anybody check that out?
Yep.
Indeed.
Initial thought?
I mean, I hate to be pessimistic, but I thought it looked really good, and then that's where my pessimism comes in.
Ooh.
Is once bitten, twice shy, I'd say, by Marvel recently. So the trailer's great. The trailer was exciting. Interesting. The adult tone that they've been talking about came through. I don't know. I was very intrigued.
Have you been burned recently, like we have with with all the recent MCU products, though?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I've kind of stopped watching. You know, like I didn't like after Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. That was really the low point of cinema, in my opinion, of the last year. That sort of slowed me to a crawl. So that's why I'm like, man, this one it's interesting, but I don't want to get too hyped just yet.
That's pretty fair. Paul, did you check it out?
Yeah, I did. I believe, based on Marvel's current record, that is all the footage of Jackson in the entire series, and he's going to be substituted.
Oh, really?
That's my assumption based
God
on
damn.
past evidence. Like I wanted to be a nuclear physicist. I deal with empirical proof or evidence, and based on Marvel's past record, he's going to be like they did on the movie Ev mentioned, the
Multiverse of Madness.
The Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, I mean that wasn't really a Doctor Strange movie at all. It was a bait and switch, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying that we have now seen in that clip all of Fury's contribution to the entire series. They crammed it all into this one, trailer, and then it's going to be some drag queen or something. just mark my words.
I was about to say that's a really mean way to talk about, and then I realized I don't know the name of the actress who plays his sidekick, so that joke's going to fall flat. Damn it!
Well, Mulder is in there, the Canadian actress, the tall, skinny actress who was.
Yeah.
What's her Smulders? Name? Colby Smulders.
Yeah.
Oh, Colby
Smulders.
Colby Smulders. Yeah.
I like a lot, but she was on there a quick blip. I'd accept her taking over from Fury, but
I would accept her because she's already a built-in character.
Yeah, that's my point. But anyways, I'm just kind of half joking.
Yeah, but you make a plausible case. I mean, even Ant-Man does spend most of its time not focusing on Ant-Man. I mean, that gives the lead goes to Janet Van Dyne and to a lesser extent Cassie in Ant-Man as well, and he is sort of just there to make up the numbers for a large part of that film. And from what I've seen anyway, Secret Invasion it's got quite a large cast, some of whom are returning, and of course it's got the new bold, young, aggressive, forward-thinking female Emilia Clarke played alleged character as well, who I mean, from what I've read of the sort of the précis of the film, or the summary of where it's going, she will probably be. She sounds very girl bossy. Let's put it that way. And
I like
she's
Emilia
the one
Clarke
who's
as an actor.
Yeah. No, she just had bad luck with being some of the things. I was thinking, Game of Thrones, and I thought, oh yeah, but how did that end? And then Terminator. Oh no, she wasn't very Sarah Connery, but she seems nice enough. But yeah, from what I understand of the film summary is that you have this. The premise is that it's picking up from weirdly where Captain Marvel left off, and obviously that left off many years ago in universe and in our universe as well, because Fury has promised to give the Skrull their own sort of safe little idyllic homeworld and hasn't come through with that yet. So they formed some sort of terrorist organization, some of them have anyway, which are pushing to get this plan enacted by violence if needs be. And she, I think, from what I read, she's going to be sort of she's the daughter of Ben Mendelsohn's character, and she will be the one really pushing and leading for this on the behalf of the more fanatical faction of the Skrull. So yeah, she will be the moral driving force of this film, I don't doubt.
But it's a series, not the film, right? This is
sure. So what I keep saying, films. It's Force of Habit series. You're right. Yeah. So that's right for replacing Fury, and then he's supposed to be off somewhere in the galaxy, isn't he? Doing a slightly Jake Skywalker style premise.
Yeah, they bearded him up, and he's going to be drinking some blue milk somewhere.
Milking the tits of an alien.
That's yeah.
I wondered too about. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was no. You go ahead. I was going to pull up a kind of segue into another topic here with this. So go right ahead.
I was just briefly going to touch on, like, Samuel L. Jackson always surprises me that he's 74. Like he's getting up there. So I think that might lend to the fact that, like, I can't expect him to carry like an action franchise like that. You know what I mean? Like he's natural to start phasing out him, like, as this goes on. So that makes me a little concerned for that too.
Yeah, the fact that they're making him the main character, well, maybe maybe making him the main character, at his advanced age is true. When you're that old, like it's fine to be the background character, just like he had been since his introduction in the original Iron Man and the after credits. But yeah, he's the primary character now.
Well, my only thought to that is, what action did he ever take part in?
Not really. Yeah, Winter Soldier, that one scene, and it wasn't even like he was just in a car. So it wasn't necessarily
in the first of the Avengers films. His stunt double rolls out of a crashing helicopter and shoots a bit, but that's about it. I think
that's about it. I mean, he swishes around in a long leather jacket, very Hungarian style. You know, Hungarians are used to long leather jackets, usually brown. That's a part of the costume of all Hungarian men. But yeah, that's about it. So, he could do that like forever. I mean, Patrick Stewart, they've got him walking around apparently. So
walking might be too strong a word there, but he's standing up sometimes. I agree.
Yes. He's been planked, we call it in the trade. It's on a dolly, and you just plank the actor.
You wheel them around.
Wheel them around.
It's like Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
I can see that. I mean, that's the role that he's ready for. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson, he does have great screen presence. He's got an amazing voice. He's got the cool factor as well. He can pull that off. He can do minimal amounts of work and has an outsized influence on anything he happens to be in. But I guess part of the problem with in a way, they're asking him to play a very different character if he is going to be this sort of very downcast, quite depressed and put upon person who's hiding from the failures of his past life. Then they've kind of stripped some of that authority away from him anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how Samuel L. Jackson pulls off a very different style of character. But then secondarily, he's also not, I believe, going to be involving any of the still alive Avengers in the plot, even though, much like with Black Widow, it will probably be very annoying that he doesn't, because they'll help out a lot if he were to get in touch with them. But that means he's also not being able to manipulate things from behind the scenes, which was kind of the point of his character. So then you have to ask, what's left? What are we expecting from him?
But I think you're right. I think Clark is going to be replacing him as the driving character. They're just going to turn him into Picard 3, the one they wanted to make Picard 3. That's what he's going to become.
I mean, look at his age. It's definitely a possibility.
I don't think it's an age issue. I think it's just Disney doing their substitutes.
Which is really too bad. I mean, if they want, typically they're substituting for political.
Sure, and you have to have a lead character has to have a want, and what's his driving want in this particular thing? I mean, in every movie he's been, as Platoon has said, that he's been the person in the back. He's been the Charlie from Bosley from Charlie's Angels. That's what he's been all this time. You folks, you go over there.
Is this
it's not my best.
This is to actually give the potential for the show a little bit of credit, which is it could potentially actually be giving him it's clearly giving him more to do, but it's letting us know like what's going on in the background, because it seems like this is him keeping a promise that he was supposed to the promise that he made to them in like the Captain Marvel movie, and it's kind of been, it's just on like Spider-Man Far From Home when he was with the Skrulls up in space and stuff. Like his intent is to find them a home, and he's not, and so they want to be here. And that could be interesting. And it is supposed to be in the background, right? It's secret invasion. So he's still the man in the background, but we're taking a peek behind the curtain, kind of. All the same, that leads me into, let me screen share. Maybe I can pull it up.
Oh, I know what happened. He's got his real estate license and he's selling the property.
He's waiting for the market to crash and get him a good price.
That's right. I got a property for you? Let me show you. Got a pool, and if you Skrulls are gonna love.
So he
says, what do we got here?
He says here about the Skrulls. Right here. He told the Skrulls they were trying to find them a place to live. He promised them they were going to find them a planet or somewhere they could be, and that's not going so well. and then it gets juicy. We don't know who's a friend, who's an enemy. There's a political aspect that kind of fits into where we are right now. Who's okay? Who's not? What happens when people get afraid and don't understand other people? You can't tell who's innocent and who's guilty in this particular instance. So, unsurprisingly.
I mean, has anyone, because it's based on a comics run, isn't it, this one?
It is.
Has anyone here read the comic
Yes,
run?
and this is going to be nothing like the comic book. The comic book was it was super interesting because you had all the superheroes involved, and it created a battle between superheroes because some superheroes doing naughty things, and it was really the Skrulls in disguise. This is not going to be a cameo fest or anything. So they're basically taking the name and taking the concept and then doing their own thing with it. Kind of like they did with the Captain America Civil War movie, where it was not like the comic book at all. But back then, they could still take a comic book concept and turn it into something cool. Not that I'm really giving them any leeway now. So we'll see about that.
It's one of those quotes. It might turn out to be an unfortunate quote in the sense that you can read politics into a thing, and you can take politics as an inspiration, and you can do it in really interesting artistic ways. And so this premise of, he's promised to find them a homeland, and they believe that or some of them believe that he has betrayed or reneged on that promise. And so, of course, you get the divide in them between the more conservative-minded, trustful members of their group and the sort of the younger, less patient, much more militant versions who want to effectively, fight to achieve the promise that he made but can't fulfill. That, you can go back through history and you can find really fascinating historical analogs for that. I mean, the one when I read that Vanity Fair piece, the one that came to mind was sort of the situation the Jews found themselves in after the 1940s, when they were, they'd been promised by the Balfour Declaration and others that they were going to have a homeland created for them. And yet, when the time came, the British government was doing a huge amount to actually stall the creation of that homeland. And of course, then you got the growth of various Jewish terrorist groups in Israel who wanted to essentially force the British hand. You can use that as the basis for a story like this. And what you're doing is you're making a slightly political analogy, but what you're doing is drawing on politics for inspiration, as opposed to drawing on politics to use it allegorically as a message for our present day society, which is what most politicking in films these days tends to be. So if Samuel L. Jackson is referring to inspiration, then maybe the quote's unfortunate and we're being unduly cynical about his or not, given your name, about the what he means about that. More likely, though, I think they probably will eschew the more interesting analogs from history, and they will turn it into a refugee story, which much more fits the current American psychodrama.
I hate having to ask this, but does anyone know where he stands personally on these kind of things? I thought he was pretty anti-cancel culture type of stuff. So that would give me, if so, that would give me the chance to give him the benefit of the doubt that it's not it's going to be a political agenda driven shit like all the other stuff has been. And he's just saying it like you said,
But how much say would we estimate that he would have in some of those creative or story structural or thematic elements of the show?
Nothing.
Just because he might be
not at all
middle of the road or no bullshit kind of guy, that.
No, they're giving him a big paycheck.
Yeah,
he's happy. So,
yeah.
Movie Cynic, what the comic book that it is ostensibly not using? Can you just give us a summary of what the comic book of this was?
It just really it doesn't go super far beyond what I described. It's the Skrulls are not good in the comic books, and they're just a super faction of aliens and shape shifting. They can take on the image of anybody. And so it pits the superheroes at war together. I'm sure there's more details. There's someone surely in the chat that's screaming at me right now. But essentially, that's what it boils down to. It was a really fun comic book. It was they do events every year or every couple of years. And this was a big event series that had a ton of tie-ins and all this stuff. Every series has its own.
Because in Captain America, the Skrulls were good, at least the ones that we met.
Right. And so this seems like in this show, it's going to be like they're the antagonist, but they're not evil or bad. Like they're just not getting what was promised to them, so they kind of start becoming the enemy a bit. That's where I see it going. If they're trying to emulate the comic series whatsoever. But it really was just a fun series that pitted superheroes against each other because some were Skrulls in disguise, and so you had fun tension between factions of heroes and stuff. But other than that, like people have been calling for this. I think it would have worked well in like the phase 2 era of the MCU if we had more heroes at the time. I don't really see what they're going to do with this. It has the same feel as like the Winter Soldier and Civil War movies, the more serious tone. And, it's fine to suggest that those movies had political undertones and stuff too. So this is in line with it. I just don't really have much patience though with MCU.
Well, this is going to cause some problem for Disney, because if they've taken a male character and gender and race swapped them and then had a Skrull take their place, there's some ethical problems with that.
Problematic.
That is problematic. What? We've just done all this and now an alien shapeshifter's like, what?
Yep.
So then you have to check what gender the alien is to be able to. This is so confusing. I'm having a hard time.
Do you guys think that for like the average consumer of film and television and people that watch this stuff and enjoy it but aren't necessarily obsessed with all of the storylines, do you think that people feel up to date with this stuff? Because I know as someone who does pay pretty close attention to this stuff, I see this trailer and my memory is jogged by these characters, but I kind of struggle to remember the situations where I last saw them in. Like, oh, was it a post-credit scene? Oh, was it this? Oh, was it like I there's not a lot of context. Do you think most people are fine with that?
Last we saw them, they were eating shawarma.
Oh yeah. No, this is a really great point, because I was an MCU fanboy, man. Like, follow everything, knew everything, like memorized all the box office of all the movies and stuff, like that deep. And it's gotten to a point where, like, regardless if the product's bad, there's just such an oversaturation. Like, I don't remember what happened in Captain Marvel. I'm not gonna watch that movie more than once, man.
Nope.
So, like, even if I love the MCU still, so this reminds me of in the 2000s, in the year 2000, Marvel, the comic book imprint, decided to launch a new offshoot of the Marvel universe, completely start fresh, and they call it the Ultimate Universe, because they felt that their past was too big of a web and it was putting off new readers. So what they did was the Ultimate Universe started everything all over again. It was an offshoot. Like, the first thing introduced was Spider-Man. They slowly introduced X-Men, and that was awesome. And it was like outselling the regular Marvel comic books. But after 10 years, that became so convoluted that it went against the entire point of its own existence. So they had to nuke it. And it's like, that's where we're at already with the MCU, I feel.
And it is spiraling out, of course. The more multiversal stuff you include, the more quantum realm stuff you include, the harder it is to keep track of. But then it all does become about, when you are doing a continuation, as a Secret Wars is, what are you continuing from? Are you going to first of all identify the things which are forefront in people's minds and imaginations and really build and structure a universe around those? So all of your references make sense to the general audience, not just people who have been obsessively watching every single installment. It's a peculiar decision then to go back to Captain Marvel, which was never particularly well received. In fact, it was quite unpopular. And is also quite an old film now by the standards of the MCU. A lot has happened since then. And then to build this entire continuity anyway is referencing something that lots of people either didn't like or won't remember. And it's not just a passing reference either. Of course, you've got returning characters like Ben Mendelsohn's character, but you've also got Emilia Clarke's character, who is his daughter, and the daughter is supposedly, if you read the Vanity Fair piece anyway, I think she is shown, but she's a much younger girl when we last see her, probably in Captain America. This is her now, in Captain Marvel even. This is her now grown up. And I guess the audience is supposed to take something from that, like, oh yeah, we've been with her journey this entire way. We remember who she is.
No, I don't.
I don't even remember what she looked like. I don't even remember seeing her. So it's tricky when they get to the size that they're currently at. But I don't think it's necessary that it has to become nonsensical. It's just that they are choosing the wrong things to build stories around.
So it is pre-snap, right?
This will be post snap, I think.
Post snap.
Yeah, so this is way into the future. So one of the reasons that Nick Fury's character is away, sort of hiding in space, is that he's trying to come to terms with the fact that Tony Stark is dead and Nat Romanoff is dead, and you know, all of the failures, which aren't really failures because Endgame paid all of that off and their sacrifices were for something. But in Fury's mind, I gather they're going to try and portray it as a sense of failure. So it's future timeline as opposed to going back to Captain Marvel again.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't tell what time slot it was trying to place itself in when I was watching. I was like, is this like post Captain Marvel but pre Avengers, or
well, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I was so confused.
But he's so shaggy that it's got to be way later.
It's got to be, yeah. And because he was with the Skrull. This is so. I hate having to figure this out. He was with the Skrulls at the end of Spider-Man: Far From Home, and so this is a continuation of that. I take it then.
I believe so. Yeah, that's roughly where it's set. And then of course you've got the question of, well, he's not going to be involving any other heroes, so there's limited tie-in potential for the rest. But the problem with this vast interconnected universe they've created is that these shows are supposed to impact each other, and they're also supposed to impact the films that come after them. So that automatically makes it implausible that he doesn't invite surviving Avengers to help him. It does give them the opportunity to tie in some familiar faces. I think Don Cheadle's character is in it. Rhodey's in this, I think.
Yeah, Rhodey's in it.
But then, you know, let's say the resolution of this, it all comes happily ever after. They find these guys a new planet or a safe homeland. What's the betting that we never hear about it ever again in any Marvel product because they don't have a clue what they're doing with it?
Probably pretty high. It's a high chance.
I did see that Christopher McDonald, aka Shooter McGavin, is joining the cast in this
yes!
show. So that is kind of low-key my most excited.
That will be the one reason I want to see it then. I love that guy. Shooter.
It's incredible. Incredible.
And they've got Olivia Colman is also joining the cast. And I think this is going back to that question of what they mean, what Sam Jackson means when he says about politics. I know that they've quoted, say, Cold War as inspiration, which, of course, in espionage thrillers, they've mentioned John le Carre as a source of their inspiration. And the espionage-style Cold War politics worked pretty well for the Winter Soldier. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that they're taking this kind of line. It will just be interesting. It's also, I think, Olivia Colman she's the head of MI6, or she's part of MI6. She's English, and so, of course, she has to be the villain. So some habits die hard.
Well, you know what? If that's the route, right now I'm enjoying Cleo and all sorts of other post Iron Curtain-y shows and movies and things. I liked Tetris for that reason also. I mean, yeah, you're right. The Winter Soldier really benefited from that, and it gives it an anchor. So if they're going for that kind of Jean le Carré experience, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
if they can have anyone there who can write that way.
That's the question, because I was reading through this Vanity Fair piece thinking, yeah, you know what? A lot of the things you're dropping, the influences you're mentioning, these are all quite good. I could imagine a really good story to be told out of all of this raw material. But then you can say the same of virtually any recent Marvel film. And yeah, as you say, their ability to actually turn that into something good is highly dubious.
Well, my biggest disappointment actually was Black Widow compared to everything, because I thought that really could have been a genre, kick-ass genre, movie, much more, less special effectsy and much more competent women going at kicking ass. But they decided not to go that way.
I remember the opening credits of that film got me really excited because it was very like darker and heavier, and I was like, oh shit, they're doing this, and they didn't do it.
No, they didn't do that.
They went full comic book.
So, which is why we're not trusting Marvel. Marvel's not, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but it's a long benefit.
I wanted to ask, is this off the top of my head, is this the first time there's a big Marvel property show or film where the superhero's name is not in the title of the program? Because I've been waiting for that. So if that's the case, I'll give it credit for that.
I'm trying to think if there are others besides the Avengers ones.
But even the Avengers are the heroes, you know.
True, yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
And they had the winged dude who became Captain America in that series. That was terrible.
Yeah, but that series was literally called.
It was also the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
there you go.
What are our two protagonists' names? Okay, that'll do.
I'll do the trick.
Yeah. No, I think you might be right. I can't think of another one.
There was that Werewolf by Night, and I just thought of that, and I know that was sort of a one-off, but I don't know. Even that has werewolf in it. So
I'd forgotten that even existed. There's a few of those going around. What are we expecting this to do then, numbers-wise? I mean, is there a huge amount of anticipation that anyone here is detecting for this show? Because I keep forgetting that it's coming, and I still don't know when the release date is. But it might be that I've just fallen out of touch. Is anyone very excited for this?
No.
Not personally.
No, I think you and I predicted a couple of weeks ago that, like, best case scenario, it's so bad it's good. And think of it this way too: Falcon and Winter Soldier came out a couple years after the last MCU product. It was there was a lot of hype because of the fact that COVID postponed everything by a year. So we had 2 years before we had seen anything new. And it still just got like middling numbers. Like low-key did better than that. So this is coming off the back of multiple MCU-related failures, both critically and commercially. And there's no huge character in it besides Samuel L. Jackson, who was a background character the entire time. So I don't think anyone else is excited about it.
I mean, if this is any judge, the Disney... the Disney Channel on YouTube. This has got 25 million views. That's kind of respectable. I mean, again, I don't know what its down voting is, but 25 million views is.
I'm gonna go
showing
check
interest.
I gotta plug in, so I'm gonna go check.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty high viewer rate because the trailer's not been out for very long either.
No. You know what? People like Samuel Jackson so much.
I do.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, it's like the John Wick thing as well. How popular would John Wick be if it wasn't for Keanu Reeves?
No.
No. Yeah, nothing like the same.
It has not been ratioed. There's 800,000 likes to 26,000 dislikes.
Oh, there you go.
That's pretty good.
Because Sam will come to your house and beat the shit out of you.
Well, you got a lot of diehard fans that have been kind of out in the marshes, so to speak, for a while, trying to defend Marvel and like, no, this has actually been good. No, Phase 4 was actually pretty good. You just, you're missing it. And so I think now that you have something that looks a little more grounded, that looks a little more like it has potential to restore a little panache, maybe people are like, hell yeah, like this is it, you guys. We told you Marvel's not done.
Who's defending Phase 4?
These Marvel diehards out here. We got
really.
I found an article earlier today that was defending Phase 4 as a massive success, with the next paragraph following the praise about how there's massive restructure going on for this incredible success. The cope is unreal.
We caught a lot of shit.
Occasionally, they will pop up in my comment section. If like any given review of a recent Marvel thing which mentions that Phase 4 was shit, they'll say like, "No, it wasn't." Like if you looked at Phase 1 the same way, you'd find exactly the same problems. No. That's not true at all. I'm trying to think of the reasons to be optimistic. One of the other arguments that I've heard people occasionally trot out is that the reason so many of the recent Marvel things have been bad is precisely because of the pandemic. COVID lockdowns, for some reason, meant that writers could no longer write. And now we're moving out of the pandemic. Maybe there'll be a marked upturn in quality again. I've been trying to find a way to make that make sense. I've not been able to, but I don't know if any of you guys think that then maybe we should cut Marvel some slack because of the pandemic.
I'm not cutting Marvel any slack.
No. At the end of the day, you made the perfect point. Like the pandemic should have made you a better writer as opposed to a worse writer. Like you're just there wrecking Like that doesn't affect that.
Well, the Russos have just introduced Extraction 2 with a fantastic trailer with Hemsworth on Netflix. And that looks good. That looks really good. But it said, Russo brothers escaped from Disney can now do good stuff. Here, watch this. I mean, they won an Academy Award, right? I mean, excuse me, gents. Hold my beer. Those of us who were diehard. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm such a nerd that I'm willing to give anything one shot. I'm not one of these. I'm signing off from this, this whole thing forever. Disney, fuck you. That's it. I'm done. No, I'm too much invested all my life in being part of this culture, and if they bring something good, then I'll judge it on its own merits. I as much as I hate Disney as a company right now, but I don't know.
No, I'm right there with you. I love Marvel. I love superheroes. I'm never going to stop. It's more of just like, well, they're doing bad right now. So you heard yesterday, everyone gives me crap that I love the Batman. There's still goodness out there. And if it pops up again, I will say it's great if it's great. But
I'm just not seeing the level of creativity that, we can go back to Iron Man 1. You went, wow, this is a real fanboy did this.
Yeah.
The train fight sequence in Ant-Man 1 made my heart so happy, because I went, what a twist, what fun that was. And everyone in the theater was laughing correctly. At the close-up of the train, cut away to the train just going.
That was good.
That was pretty funny.
Thomas the Tank Engine's villainous role.
Yes, Thomas the Tank Engine. We still have that at our home. My wife believes my daughter's going to have a kid, and we better hold on to all this shit here. Anyways, that's a different video. We'll have another stream just on that, but. I'm just not seeing that childlike inventiveness in this could be a great serious experience, but that's not necessarily what I want either. There was some great, in Tetris, there was some great laughs. The chase scene at the very end, and the Lada versus the Skoda, 75 horsepower, 1.6 liter 4-cylinder, a Fiat based Lada is just like, going through the streets of Moscow. I know that was a gag. There's no way that they were, this is our version of the Bullet chase, but in Moscow in a 65 horsepower Lada.
I finally saw the trailer for that. I haven't watched it yet. I just saw the trailer yesterday. I was like, this looks really good.
No, I liked it. But
yeah, I definitely plan on checking that out.
Computerdom. So that gave me joy, and I just want to see that bits of inventiveness to take us someplace a little bit different. Even if they executed this perfectly, I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to give us that kind of joyous moment.
And that might not even be because of where they're going with injecting like ideology and all that bullshit into it. It's more of just like it is their number one moneymaker. And so it's become so corporatized. It has to do a certain thing. And you can't take those sorts of risks, even though maybe you should now, because
I think you should. I think that's how you bring it down to, I've been saying that they need to bring it down to street level.
I totally agree with that.
Yes.
And to all the people that I like Platoon was saying, he always gets a certain sort of comment at least once or twice in his videos. So do I, which is like, oh, you're expecting Avengers Endgame level stuff all the time. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I hate the multiverse stuff. It's too big. There are no stakes. Bring it back down to street level. Give me that stuff again. That's what I enjoy.
When was the last good Marvel bad guy?
Ooh.
When's the last good Marvel movie?
No, but just the bad guy. How do you make a good movie without a good bad guy?
You gotta have most of the time, the bad guy's more important than the hero as it ends up. Look at The Dark Knight.
Yeah, they had 6 bad guys in Tetris, which is actually a writing trick. When you're writing a screenplay, you want a minimum of 4 antagonists. And people don't know where they come from. So it can be your wife during that period where you say, I've mortgaged the house against your better judgment. I didn't tell you. She's now an antagonist. So people can switch, but you want a minimum of 4 whenever you're writing a screenplay.
So it's like wrestling, heel versus babyface.
Yeah. And in the case of Tetris, you can have an inanimate object as a antagonist, which was the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was a character in the show, which is, I think it was Pinter that wrote the park, the play in the New York park where the 2 guys fought over the park bench, which is a great writing exercise where the park bench, you have to have a minimum of 3 characters in every scene. You can't write a scene with 2 characters. There's always, every scene has to have 3 characters. And the 3rd character can be an animate object or a concept or something.
I wanted
anyway,
to
so I've gone into writing
this.
theory and
no, that's like
it's a good point, because I think one of the reasons that a lot of these more recent Marvel things just don't land very well is that they don't understand the character you can put into an inanimate place or object like that. So that was always the argument for scaling down. When you come off of the back of Endgame and you begin again from the ground up, you need to give people recognizable places, because those places have characters, and those characters are themselves things you care about. So it's like Phase 1 does that reasonably well because it's largely set in and around the real world with stakes that we all understand. Everybody basically has a grasp of the character of New York City and why that deserves to be saved, allegedly. But then since then, it's gone wild. You cannot give character to a quantum realm. It just has to be flashy colors and weird visuals. You can't give character to a multiverse because it's an infinitude. It's just impossible to do. What are we supposed to be caring about there? So the absence of place as character is a huge part of why nobody really gives a damn.
I had to point the opposite way. You actually are on my screen.
That's
the camera.
That's exactly. There you go. Done. Ding.
Boom. Another trailer that I didn't mention in the title because it came out like right before the show. Did anyone catch that Blue Beetle trailer?
Yeah.
Ooh, no, I didn't. What's it like?
Well, it's like everything you've seen in a superhero movie a million times, but this time it's Latino, and and it's also the Blue Beetle character came out in 1939. It wasn't a DC property, but it's been reinvented multiple times. So the iteration that this is adapting is a massive ripoff of an anime character called the Guyver, and it also looks like Iron Man meets Green Lantern too, because it's completely unoriginal, and the costume doesn't look as bad as the set photos did, but it also doesn't look anything special. Anyway, thoughts on the trailer, gentlemen?
I did just think the whole time, like the parallels to Iron Man with the tech in the helmet, the voice. I thought it was funny that the voice in this is like that really bland AI, like TikTok voice. And I just thought like that's intentional because that's what's popular for some reason now. But I mean, it was George Lopez is funny. that would be my main takeaway. He yells a couple times, made me chuckle. But yeah, it looks like more of the same, unfortunately.
For defensive carapace, dial 3. Press 3. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. First of all, the first time I saw the nano technology in the suit, I was done.
God,
so fucking hate
the
nanotech where things just enough make stuff. I was telling somebody on Midnight Edge today where our RV, our giant RV, got stuck in Little Cuba in Florida, in like the worst part of it, and a guy came out and said, "You should not be here in this part of town. It's very dangerous for you white people." And so we hobbled to his shop, and again, he's Cuban, and he said, this is a Chrysler brake pad. You cannot do that, but I can take this Chevy one, and I can hammer it and put it in a vise and weld it and make it work on your Chrysler, because he's Cuban, right? And there's a zeitgeist in the Latin culture for that kind of inventiveness. Why couldn't that have worked its way into? So they've got a Latino environment, and they don't use it within the context of the superhero-y parts. Like, that's just terrible writing.
Maybe it's good because they would just do the most stereotypical shit ever.
No, but no one knows what the stereotypical shit is. I mean, it's not like he's going for a burrito or something. I mean, he's not burrito like bean powered. I was just so disappointed in it. I mean, it reminded me of especially with the legs that popped out of his back, his bug legs. It was exactly the thing they jettisoned at the very end of No Way Home. They got
get rid of that shit.
All this, the Tony Stark, they did that on purpose. He said, we've had it. We're returning them to the regular Spider-Man with just the web stuff. No more all this. And I was just so happy to see it. Maybe I was, overdoing it, but I was, happy to see him back in his old spider outfit. He's now got the same limitations that he's born. It doesn't have, if only I had a nuclear reactor. Well, wait a second. Stark gave me this nuclear reactor in my suit. Oh my God, I'm so lucky. And that's what the Blue Beetle is feeling like. And there's a lot of stuff, even in the trailer, where he doesn't know how the suit works. He's in a precarious situation. He's going to get it. And then the suit automatically goes into auto protect mode and deals with the situation. Like, okay.
It's so unbelievably derivative of a bunch of stuff we've seen. And I do not care about the defense of, I didn't read Blue Beetle because it's pretty fucking stupid to me. But all the same, even if it's accurate to the comic book origin, no one cares about that. The audience that you're trying to sell to doesn't care if it actually is adapted correctly or authentically. That's not 99% of people that are seeing this crap have never read a comic book in their life. And it doesn't matter. And so the thing that they're comparing it to is like, well, I saw that already. Yep. Spider-Man had that costume. Oh, that's exactly like Iron Man. Oh, that's exactly like Green Lantern. And then you have assholes like me that are like, oh, and that's also a ripoff of the Guyver. Very clever. And it's boring. It's the millionth thing we've seen. And then you also have it up against the wall of James Gunn's DCU that's coming out. That means it's most likely not going to matter. And even if it does, the general consensus of culture right now is that, oh, DC's moving on, so this stuff doesn't matter. Right. Because it hasn't been addressed if it does or not. Anytime James Gunn talks, it's always up in the air. Like, well, he could come back. Well,
just waiting to see how it does.
Yeah, we're just waiting to see how it does, really. But we don't say that part. It's the most generic stuff I've ever seen. And in the end, too, he called Batman a fascist. I couldn't believe it.
They left it in the trailer on purpose.
On purpose. To the movie's credit, because I did have a gut reaction that was pretty visceral and upset. But the Batman in Zack Snyder's shitty little trilogy is kind of a fascist. So,
and he's almost never Bruce Wayne. Like, this is what drives me nuts. I want to see a Batman where it's 80% Bruce Wayne and 20% exciting Batman. Like,
it's fair.
And I'd like to see more Clark Kent in Superman. At least 50-50. I mean, there's problems he can solve. He can find out things as Clark Kent before he has to unleash the Superman. And we've completely lost that.
He's also much more vulnerable as Clark Kent, which means that you can actually have stakes in your story, which is the problem that Superman faces when you're trying to adapt Superman, is that when Superman is Superman, unless he turns evil, there's not, or unless someone just happens to contrive their way into getting hold of kryptonite, there's not very much you can do about that. So what am I really caring about? But that goes back to your point, Paul, about the annoyance with sort of nanotech stuff, which is that you're still sort of doing the same thing. It's like a soft magic system it has all the flaws of a soft magic system, but also all the flaws of effective invulnerability. Because, like you say, you're faced with this particularly challenging circumstance, and your suit just decides that it has this magical ability it's never used before. It will never use it again, but it means you can't die. So why am I supposed to care? But like the reason they do it is because they sort of think, well, this looks cool, so people will like it. There are a large number of people who do go along with that. They do just want to be entertained by things that look cool, and they don't really seem to value that the coolness is working against the story there. But people tend to be more critical of this, I find, when it comes to superheroes. People who make this defense, but it looks cool, of John Wick or of Avatar, will not admit the defense when it comes to Blue Beetle. People tend to now have this stricter standard, if anything, with superheroes than they do with things that they otherwise know to like, which is it's an interesting aside, I thought.
Well, I would suggest that some of my favorite characters in the movie hero genre, the ones that moved from comic books to movies, have been the tertiary and the what's after lower than tertiary, quadritiary.
Am I still here?
Anyway, so for me, people don't realize that Iron Man was like a third level down Marvel character, but that's actually why it worked. That's why he was good, because they could figure stuff out. And Blue Beetle is, I think, actually its advantage is a potential advantage, which looks like they've blown it, is the mere fact that he's like down at 6th level and you can do stuff. I remember what Alan Cummings and the crew did with Nightcrawler in X-Men. And Nightcrawler was one of the worst X-Men in the comics. But in the movie, and his, I don't know if you know the character in the story, but he had, cut himself to create all these religious designs in his skin because he was such a religious, God-fearing character, and the church was so important to him, and Cummings' characterization was just insanely brilliant. And you suddenly had this character with more depth than Xavier. Like, it was just insane how much and you can do that with the lower level characters. You can figure that stuff out, which is what they're not bothering to do with Blue Beetle at all. I did like the fact that his reveal was in front of his family. That I thought was cool, because that's very Latino, because the family is very important and big in that culture. But whether they're going to exploit that later on, I don't know. But I can see that you don't have to start as big and huge as they did. You can, oh my God. And again, I always go back to Alan Cummings's Nightcrawler, which is one of my favorite realizations.
Yeah, that was great.
Wow.
He was fantastic.
He was fantastic.
And they only used him one time.
No, one time.
Yeah, they never brought him back.
Bamf.
Yeah,
bamf. Bamf. Yep, hated him in the comic books, but again, proof that
you didn't like Nightcrawler in the comics.
No, it's
interesting.
Bamf.
The next thing that was on the agenda too, unless you guys have anything else to say about Blue Beetle, please do if you do.
That's generic. We'll see, but it might succeed. There's 70 million Latinos in the United States, and it could just be huge. Or, the Latino community is they're complaining that they don't have their own massive failure, so they want their own. We don't have our own massive flop. It's our own. It's our turn to have our own massive flop.
How much was the budget? Actually, I'm trying to find that, because I don't know. It's probably at least 150 million. It's pretty.
Well, it's based on the previous regime, the incompetent regime.
Oh, so maybe it's 202 or 250, maybe.
I don't
an untested
think it'd be
hero.
that high, but
no, it's probably like 150. They even kept Spider-Man's budget down to like 150, 175, which is pretty impressive.
Right, and I mean, if all the cast is Latinos, and it's half the cost. Oops, sorry.
Oh, no.
They filmed it in twice the time, or half the time. The next subject was D&D. I didn't even see it.
I didn't see it.
I didn't.
Am I the only one who's bothered to watch this film? Oh no.
Yeah. So your turn.
Over to
Tom.
you.
God, we can
Over
get
to
this one out
you.
of the way really quickly then. It's incredibly mid. Lots of people I've seen have sort of come around to the idea that it's surprisingly good, which is okay, fair, but it's a comparative statement. Yes, next to Ant-Man or any recent Marvel film, it's better than those. So I suppose that makes it surprisingly good. But if your comparative is anything broader, or even if you just, take the quaint old-fashioned view that there might be innate merits to writing and things, it is the definition of mid. It's quite aggressively mediocre and unambitious. Like it's a fantasy film from the era before the Lord of the Rings, when all fantasy is basically like you get the magic item to rescue the princess from the evil wizard. The end is that Willow, but without the character. There's not a huge amount more to be said about it. It does some things it does some things surprisingly well. If you compare it to, again, Ant-Man is a good example. I think I criticized Ant-Man because it doesn't divvy up the roles for its characters. It puts everything into Janet Van Dyne. And in my review of that, I actually said, look, if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, you know that the best party is the one with individual skills and specialisms, and the whole point of the party is that you combine those skills and specialisms to beat the day. And Ant-Man didn't do this. To be fair, Dungeons and Dragons does do that. It's got the 4 main members of the party. Not only do they each have unique skills which are uniquely useful, and the film shows you that, but it does also give each of the 4 characters their own miniature arc as well, which, and it sounds like damning it with faint praise to say, oh my goodness, they've given characters character. But they kind of have done that, and that's not bad. And I don't think it's bad even just because... Sorry, I don't think it's not bad just because everything else is shit. I think they did it reasonably well. You kind of care about them a bit. But it just struck me as a film that was so terrified of failing that it took the safest possible route with the safest possible story, with the minimal amount of background information, the shallowest possible world. Again, as we were talking about earlier, no real character in the place in Neverwinter in this particular example. And so the best I think anyone will say about it is that, hey, it's better than Marvel, so great. But it will never be particularly memorable, I don't think, and it won't... because it's so terrified of failing, it won't truly succeed. It will just be kind of meh.
That's an interesting observation.
And that's the best we can hope for. In a lot of ways, that's the best we can hope for now. Like with these big budget, high, like fresh IP kind of things, is they're trying to appeal to such a broad audience that it's often so uneven from what I've seen. The reviews I've seen or the things I've read of this film are that it's genuinely funny. So I would ask you, would you agree with that? Were there a lot of laughs to be had?
I think the humor works better than it does, again, with the MCU as the inevitable comparator. The humor does work slightly better. It does have a couple of jokes that do land and that do kind of make you smile. But it does that problem, and if you ever read any of the interviews they did before the film came out, they said that the problem with fantasy as a meta is that it's too arch, it's too serious, it's too dark, it's too stern, it's too gritty, and we wanted to show that we could do another side of fantasy, the light-hearted, fun, self-referential, self-deprecating side with meta humor. And I read the interview and I thought, yes, if you think the problem with fantasy is that it's not enough like the MCU, then you've probably misidentified the thing. The humor does work better than given MCU things, but it still has that problem of sort of emotional whiplash in that, and MODOK does this in Ant-Man, where the scene is ostensibly serious and somber, and you're supposed to care about what's happening to the character, only for someone to do a little quip, which makes you think, oh, I'm not really supposed to take this seriously at all. It's just kind of light comedy. So it's one of the many reasons I don't think it will stick very firmly in anyone's mind, is that the humor, though it can occasionally be funny, does render it a shallower proposition than if it had allowed itself the time to actually be serious with its characters. There's only one scene in it where a character gives a serious monologue with serious consequences that's not interrupted by a joke, and not coincidentally, it's probably the strongest scene in the film. I just wish they'd do more of that.
Is this one of those situations where everyone has the same sense of humor too, and they all talk the exact same?
Similar-ish, yeah. There is some of that goes on.
I blame a comic book writer for this. His name is Brian Michael Bendis, and he kicked off that imprint I was talking about earlier, the Ultimate Marvel Universe back in 2000. He was hyper influential when it comes to writing, but major criticism was all of his characters were quippy and talked the exact same. But that's kind of where the MCU drew inspiration from, was his writing. And so that kind of influenced the movies and how all these characters talk the exact same. And it's like bled out into the rest of Hollywood because of the MCU's initial success over 9 or 10 years. So in a, whatever, how many degrees of Kevin Bacon way, like, it's his fault. I just want to throw that out there. That's my contribution to D&D.
Well, there's no fun in writing a character with interchangeable lines. It's one of the rules of especially sitcom writing, which I'm better at. A film I've done, I recently wrote a film that's out there. We'll see whether anybody wants it. But even then, I followed the rules where if someone had a joke, could any of the other characters say this joke? And if they could, I would alter the vocabulary to suit that character even more. And sometimes I'd go, you know what, this joke actually goes to this other person because of the way it's worded. And that's it's sweating the details. And once you've got that down, and you've then suddenly you've got texture that you don't realize existed before. If you make those decisions. But that's, I don't know, that's the fun part of writing is having that discipline.
And I see where I can see where it's a problem. These people are on crunch time when it comes to writing, and this is given a mild little bit of leeway to them because like the story I'm writing, I've been working on it for like the first volume came out 4 years ago, and there's 2 volumes to go, and I've been working on it since I was like 19. I'm 36 years old now, so it's one story where I
get it done.
I know, where I slave over these things though that you're talking about, and they don't have time to do that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I'm also not getting paid, hundreds of thousands.
No, it's true. But I gave myself 2 months to write it, and I did. And I just followed the discipline of doing it and got it done.
Gave yourself a timeline to finally finish something.
Yep.
Yep.
You can always go back and edit and improve. I mean, actually, everything is, who is it who said that it's not writing, it's rewriting. So
there was also a great quote. Oh man, I wish I knew who it was. I think it's by someone that we regularly laugh at and criticize, but she said that writing is 90% procrastination. And I was like, that's the best thing you've ever written.
I like that. Yeah, my saying is if something's worth doing well, it's not worth doing at all. That's my mantra. I used to open writing when I used to do them, seminars or when I would present to people back when I was actually famous and people were interested in me. I started with that. People would go, what did you say?
Now you're YouTube famous though.
Yes, but it's not quite
in short order.
Famous. I used to be stopped on the streets of Toronto almost daily. I hate it. I mean, it wasn't fun.
My motto with writing is just to get it right the first time. I don't bother. Why re-edit?
Perfection, baby.
Just nail it and you got it.
That's the Ryan Johnson approach to script writing.
Perfection off the bat, baby.
And the last few films of Woody Allen, none of those seem to have been rewritten.
One draft, send it off. That's perfect.
Ray Bradbury apparently was famous for that. I believe it was just one draft. That's it, done. So I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that was always going to be the problem that Dungeons and Dragons faced as well, which is that you're canonizing a story in off of a medium which is very famous and very popular because it just gave you the mediums by which to tell your own story. So the competitor for Dungeons and Dragons the film isn't just every other film that's out at the moment. It's also, have you ever played the game? Do you remember the stories that you've been a part of, that you've either created or that someone's created that you've taken part in? How does it match up to those? And, I've only played it a couple of times. Both of the times I was very drunk. Half the people were very, very high. We didn't take it seriously. It's like one of them, we were on a quest to save like the butt plug of hope from the rectum sanctum of somewhere. And And it's just fun. It's good fun. So like you had to inject humor into the film, obviously, because Dungeons and Dragons is innately quite comical. But the problem is that those journeys were much more memorable and more creative and more inventive than the thing that the official film has managed to do, because it was trying to be incredibly safe and just appeal to a general audience, and it didn't let itself use the imagination of storytelling or even use many of the great world building tools that makes Dungeons and Dragons so successful. It does so much work for you. The rule books free you up to just apply your imagination to a world that's basically mathematically perfect, making sure that the characters you create fit exactly into the thing. All your power levels match. They're all scaled properly if you've actually added the numbers up correctly, and that's what makes it such a great avenue for imagination and applying your own imagination to it. But this film, it just doesn't really do that. It doesn't have a sense of character in that way. It's like what you would do if you asked ChatGPT, but an early model, to fill out a character sheet for Dungeons and Dragons for you, and it just gives you just this boilerplate, quite generic backstory for each of them and runs with it.
Did you ever see the cartoon?
There's a cartoon? No,
yeah,
I didn't.
It's a huge, massive Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh, no, that passed me by. There's also the film in 2000, which I haven't seen either.
Oh, no, I don't know that one.
So the one with Jeremy Irons in it.
No,
that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's horrible. I remember seeing that. Terrible.
Well, there you go. I'm sure this one is better than that one in our case. There was that to be said.
Although Jeremy he did some great scene chewing. Actually, I mean, I didn't see the movie, but I'll tell you the one thing in the trailer that took me out of it, and this is going to be a weird thing to say, were the modern haircuts.
Yeah, they are quite modern, and also quite modern dress as well. For well, some of them more than others. A lot of people. It's almost an innovative marketing campaign, because a lot of people who've gone to see it and have subsequently said, "Well, that's better than I thought it was," were people who were complaining that the trailers just made it look absolutely insufferable. Like the type of humor that they deployed and then cut for the trailer specifically just made it seem like this generic MCU knockoff again. And to give it its credit, no, they are genuinely a bit funnier than that, but it's kind of an innovative marketing campaign. If you make everyone think, oh, this is going to be shit, and then they go and see it and they think, well, at least it wasn't shit, so that's success.
Brilliant moves. I mean, that's what turned me off from it when I saw the trailer. It's like, yep, nope. And then it opened to 71.5 million worldwide on a $150 million budget, and plus prints and marketing. So is this going to flop?
It doesn't sound like it is. I mean, isn't that a bigger opening weekend than Ant-Man? I mean, Ant-Man did flop, obviously.
No,
but
no. Ant-Man opened to like 200 worldwide.
Oh, I got that completely wrong.
But then stayed there.
Yeah, and then it basically stayed there. It wasn't received as well as D&D. Here's my take on the box office, and it'll be a flop. It will be a flop, and it's because in this day and age, the best holds for movies are like 49%, 50% weekend over weekend, and that's for movies with good word of mouth. I just think it's not going to reach the number to break even, because the number typically you have to. Paul, you can help me out on this.
Sure,
it's normally like double, is it not, or a little extra?
That's the best way to do it. Is whatever the budget is, double it.
Well, I thought it was when you have to double the budget and prints and marketing, which is typically.
Well, there's no more prints.
Oh yeah, because it's all digital.
It's all sent over satellite. I mean, I come from the era where you had bicycled movies to the point where you didn't even open them wide. You took your prints to the state of New York. Then you picked them up and you bicycled them over to Wisconsin. No, actually, Wisconsin would be.
Oh, right, because that's why, like, if you were in a regular, like, I grew up in a small town, so we'd get the movies like 2 months after they first
and they
came
would
out,
be covered in
and
shit.
they look like shit, total shit,
scratches and everying else.
But the marketing budgets have gone up exponentially anyway since they were making prints, so it's almost like offsets the cost. So I don't know. Typically, prints and just marketing is like 100 to 150, which usually matches the budgets of these things. So the break even would be like 600 million. It's only opened in 9 international territories, but they're the bigger ones. So I just don't see this thing. I don't see it breaking even.
The one difference with this is I think this would quite popular. It depends on whether they're going to be putting it into an ancillary stream that actually is making money. This is not Disney, so they don't have the problem of Disney where they dump it on Disney Plus and make nothing.
Right.
So they can actually sell it to Netflix or sell it to Prime or whomever. They've already made
Stars.
that deal. Well, it doesn't. Well, Stars is Disney.
Oh, Stars is owned by Disney. What
well,
don't they own?
Yeah, well, or they have a relationship with them.
They own BlackRock.
It will be bought, and so Universal is actually doing the best job right now, where they get a movie out, and then they get it to some other, ancillary source, and then finally it ends up on their shitty little streaming. But they don't mind. They're quite smart about it. They're squeezing as much money out of every single property that they have, whereas Disney's going in the opposite direction.
Right.
We're going to spend $300 million on Turning Red and not put it in the theater at all.
God, what a stupid move that was, and that movie sucked anyway.
I liked it. I liked the movie, but because I'm a Toronto boy.
Oh yeah, it was a Canadian.
So yeah, I think Dungeons is more than likely going to do much better on streaming and having the kids make it a good kids babysitting movie. If Platoon agrees that it's suitable for children.
Yeah, no, I think it was very much geared toward that market. I mean, that's one of the reasons they played it so incredibly safe. And people I've seen in the comment section on my second channel video saying that, what are you talking about? Stop being so critical. It's obviously meant for families. My kids loved it. It's like, okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, that's great. But kids can also like good stuff. So maybe you should try introducing them to that.
So that's my theory. It actually fits what you're talking about. I think it'll be much better once it leaves the screens. It's going to get obliterated by Mario this week.
Oh, yeah.
That's the other thing as well, because it's come out at such a really very inconvenient time. The parents will be watching John Wick, and then everyone will be watching Mario. So its second weekend probably isn't going to look very good, I wouldn't have thought, by comparison. It might actually suffer a bigger drop off than it really deserves, just because there's a much more obviously brilliant kids film out there, or
and
family film out there.
Dueling audience attention, because it's not counter. It's not a counter product at all. They're reaching the same audience. And if this opened to 38 million and Mario has a lot of hype, I'm going to a midnight show, my first midnight show in like 10 years for this thing tomorrow. I'm so hyped for Mario. This is going to be, it's probably going to open bigger than John Wick. So probably like 75 to 80 million dollars would be my opening weekend prediction.
It'll probably be better written as well.
I was really disappointed I wasn't on open bar to defend that fucking movie. I really was.
Which one?
John Wick 4. It would have made for an interesting conversation, because you, Mahler, and Drinker all agreed, and then David hadn't even seen the fucking thing. So I wish I was on there. I could have talked some shit.
Would have been fun. I had to turn down EFAP on Saturday annoyingly because they were going through it, and it's like I suddenly because Mahler said, do you want to come on? And I said, I was trying to cast my mind back to what actually happens in the film, and I found that the probably more than the middle third of it had just gone completely. And EFAP has a certain standard, I think. So I think, it would be lovely to have gone on and just torn it to bits, but they could do a much better job.
Revenge man gets revenge.
Yes. Yeah, and he also has an invincible blazer, which makes it impossible to understand the stakes in a fight scene. It can stop bullets.
How
it can
do you
stop
possibly
lorries,
think that there are stakes in the fight scene? He's going to live.
Or is
he's
he?
going to live
Or is he?
at least the end of the movie.
So the general consensus was you guys didn't like the movie.
I loved John Wick 4.
Okay.
I thought it was great.
I could see why people enjoyed it, but I paid attention to how it was written, and so no.
This is the thing. I don't think Platoon can accept the fact that I'm like, yeah, the writing is not incredible. I love the movie, and yet he'll still give me shit as if my subjective opinion.
You are allowed to love the movie, but you're given a choice, right? You've got a brilliant, enjoyable action film, or you've got a brilliant, enjoyable action film with a good story. Which do you watch?
Well, can you point me to the latter?
I don't think I really need to, because that's the basic premise.
Kung Fu Hustle.
I was gonna say, go back to the 1990s, you probably find a
revolutionary action,
Kung Fu
Kung Fu
Panda,
Hustle.
if you want to go that far.
Yeah,
But,
that really
yeah.
well. What did you think of that, Platoon? Before I step into it,
I quite liked Kung Fu
oh,
Panda
good.
from
So
what I
do
remember.
I
I've not
do
seen it for a
also
long time.
now.
Yeah.
No, I loved the first movie. I thought that was fantastic.
Or The Incredibles. It's a
Yeah.
nice, it's an action film, but it's a family centered action film which has a really good story to it as well. But my point in raising just the broad brush question was that it's not enough to say, well, obviously you don't watch John Wick for the story. That's fine, and I'm all for people enjoying it. But I'm giving you the broad brush question, which is that if you could have had John Wick with a better story, would it have been a better film?
Wouldn't you, if it's going to be a better story, how could it not be a better film? I guess
Exactly.
you're putting me in a circle as if I could possibly answer your question anyway.
Story matters. Anyway, that's not on our agenda for this evening. John Wick can wait.
What? Now I'm all frazzled. What was
Mario?
next?
Mario was mentioned. I think.
Mario.
Shall we move on to Mario predictions for Mario, which opens? When does that open? Is it in
Wednesday?
2-3 days
But
time?
it opens tomorrow here.
And you're doing midnight?
I am.
But you know what? The last movie I saw at the midnight show, this is going to be terrible, was Terminator 2.
91?
Yeah, that was the last movie.
Wow.
And the place was jammed. We were screaming from the moment Arnold showed up. And we just left. Everyone left the theater so high and without drugs. I mean,
there's something to seeing a midnight show.
But it was the perfect midnight show. We were so, and it didn't disappoint anybody.
Yep. There's something to seeing a midnight show with the crowd that wants to be there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's a reason why I still love going to the movies, because it's seeing it opening night at the earliest possible showing, and you're excited, and so is everybody there. It's like seeing a comedy in the theater with
comedy?
Well, yeah, that's true. That used to be a thing.
I was going to go to the midnight showing of Tar, but
yeah, I'm sure that was going to be a banger experience of this movie.
I didn't want to be in a theater with a bunch of lesbians. But although, no, that being said, I went to Alien 3 because a third of my office were all lesbians, and they invited me to some showing of and they all cheered when Ridley was down to her underwear.
Ripley?
Course, yeah.
Ripley was down to her underwear. They all went, yeah!
I'm going to bring on the other member of the Bluff Council.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy. All right. We're going to need a sixth person, too, I think, to even this out. It's going to kill Mr. Brown's OCD. Yo. What's up?
Am I here? Am I live?
You are.
You are live. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. This is my first time meeting. I'll include all of you. I don't know who the other guy ever is. It's all new to me. So pleasure to meet everyone here. My name's Keith. Thanks for having me.
The Butt Council?
The Bluff Council.
Sorry, I'm not.
You made me really nervous that Keith had misspelled it, and I was no.
It's in the little white area.
Because that's something I would absolutely do. Spell everything.
It's very tiny. It looks like the Butt Council.
Well, you've got a second channel name if you wanted to do that. So Keith, we are you've joined a propitious time. We're just moving on to talk about Mario, predictions for Mario, whether we're looking forward to it, what comes of it. Are you a big Mario fan, and are you looking forward to the film?
Is this because I'm Italian? Is that why it's the perfect time?
I didn't actually know you were Italian, but now it makes it a much better question.
It's a great segue. He's a cousin. Let's just say I'm interested. I grew up playing the video game probably like most of the world did. I think it's an interesting approach that they're going with. I know there was a lot of backlash around the voice acting. Chris Pratt as being the lead and the voice that goes along with it. I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts on how specific they should be to the character and to the video games, or what sort of creative license Universal has in making this film. Any thoughts from the gallery?
Who wants to go first? Chato, you're a Mario fan. What?
I've played the games. I've watched my son play it. I've Mario Kart, the whole thing. So I mean, I mean, my favorite Mario game was actually Donkey Kong.
His first appearance, then.
Yes, that was. Yeah. I played that. I
highly
lost
addictive.
A lot of quarters.
Highly addictive.
Lost a lot of quarters to Donkey Kong. Other than that, I'm more of a Zelda Nintendo fanboy than I am that entire genre of Mario. One thing I hated about the Mario side scrollers where he was jumping up to hit things was I was not prepared to fucking remember where in the invisible fucking thing I had to jump up just to hit something. And the people who would go, okay, 1, 2, 3 steps up, ding, 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 ding. No, forget.
That's where the impressiveness of speedruns comes in, though.
Yes. So that to me was
impressive.
not my shtick. I could not deal with that. So, but I mean, I am interested. I mean, I did play the 3D World, the which was fantastic. I mean, an amazing game. That was one of a groundbreaking game. Mario. What was the one? What was it called? It was on N64.
Was that Super Nintendo
Mario
World?
64?
Mario 64.
Good Mario 64. And that was fantastic. It was great puzzles. Great brilliant conceptualization by Nintendo. I'm interested in how they're going to translate that into an actual story. Does anyone know whether there's an actual story?
I have heard that early reactions are minimal story, lots of fan service, lots of nostalgia, which I kind of felt like that with the Pokemon movie that came out too. I'm a sucker for, like, I'll buy every Nintendo system ever as long as they're making Pokemon, Mario, and Zelda. I'll always buy a Nintendo system as they give me my 3 products. And
Breath of the Wild.
Yes, I'm stoked for Tears of the Kingdom. But no, when it comes to the Pokemon movie, it was good enough.
Was this Detective Pikachu?
Yeah, I hate Ryan Reynolds as the voice of Pikachu and all that stuff, but like it hit good notes for me as a Pokemon fan. So I walked away being like, that is definitely not the worst video game adaptation I've ever seen. This looks better than that, and the story in Pokemon wasn't incredible. There wasn't a lot of depth to it. So if it's better than that, I can walk away satisfied.
Yeah, but what's the story going to be other than rescuing Princess Peach?
Oh, it's going John Wick, baby. There is no story. It's all about the effects.
They're rescuing Luigi. They're not rescuing Peach. Peach is not in need of rescue.
She's a strong independent woman.
Peach rescues Mario. That's the twist that we didn't see coming. Because there is a theory, I was talking to Mauler about this on Open Bar, that we've had the huge success of the MCU, but the NCU is a very real prospect if this film takes off and does incredibly well. Nintendo moving into cinema in a big way. It's got all of the properties. I suspect Mario is going to do incredibly well just because it's so iconic and it's got everyone's attention. Everyone has a baseline familiarity with Mario, but they also have a baseline familiarity with Link and Zelda, with Samus. And you've got the potential then for, to play into sci-fi. You've got fantasy film. You've got even elements of horror if you wanted to do a Luigi's Mansion style adaptation. So whether this film does incredibly well, and if it then leads to this sort of new overarching universe of Nintendo characters. And when Mauler was saying this, I was like, I can't decide whether to be sort of childishly giddy about that idea or absolutely horrified. And I can't work out my mind which I should be.
Imagine a Smash Brothers movie.
Well, that would be that would be the team up, right?
That would be the Avengers of Nintendo.
Actually, I would have preferred a Smash Brothers movie over this.
Wouldn't you just rather be playing Smash Brothers though? That's like my question with some of these games. Like, I'd rather be controlling the characters.
And part of the problem is the game and the fact that they have kind of stories in them versus those little yellow pill-shaped things.
Little yellow pill-shaped things.
The cartoons, oh god, with the 1 and 2 eye monocles. Math, oh god. Minions.
Oh, those things.
The Minions didn't. That was a surprise breakout of that entire universe, and they created their own world around the minions very successfully. Part of the problem is, does the Mario universe have that freedom?
I think it will. I mean, I agree with you guys saying it's going to be a huge hit. Like this is going to be $1 billion movie. I mean, I think this is something that transcends generations. That I see all my friends with kids. They have every Mario collectible there is. I think the trailers look enjoyable. It has a lot of famous names attached to it. Like, I think this is exactly as you're describing. This is a launching point for the Nintendo Cinematic Universe, and I think based on the success that I anticipate for this, that it's going to be a huge, wide-ranging thing for a while.
I just like the fact that it's nice and colorful.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice.
Is everyone okay with IP just simply going away from movies and just like excitement and like an experience? Because at the end of the day, this is a movie, right? This is a movie. Should it not be judged as a movie? Or should we just accept that this is the reality of what movies are today? They're just general entertainment properties. They're just like some fanfare, some cute one-liners, some pretty colors, some cool effects, and like we just go, cool. Can't wait to see the next iteration.
Yeah. It's the Avatar defense. It's a great cinematic experience. It's not a story. It's an experience. It's like a theme park ride in that sense. And there's a place for that in cinema, but I still cling to this idea that cinema is a narrative storytelling medium first and foremost, and therefore should probably have a narrative to convey. In a way, Mario benefits because, well, it benefits in the sense that it's not tied down to a very strictly established canon and lore in terms of storytelling. They have potentially infinite creative freedom to implant a story onto Mario and to turn him into a narrative as opposed to a platform character. Whether they will do that, I'm incredibly skeptical, because the last film that came out that really attempted to do that, to make a fun film that also did tell a story with characters in it, and a narrative story at that, was probably Puss in Boots. And it did very well. I'm just hoping that eventually somebody learned the right lesson from that, which is that, if you want to take an ostensibly dead-end character that nobody really needed or wanted to see another film from, you can actually turn that into a bit of a sensation by giving it a good story, which also, has a really heartfelt message and well-reasoned characters and well-realized characters. Do that with Mario and you'll have something truly brilliant, as opposed to another mere cinematic experience that you take your kids to because you can't be bothered to look after them.
Well, maybe that's why they got Chris Pratt for the role. Maybe that's exactly why. It gives you a bit more latitude than just a guy who speaks like this all the time.
Yeah, that would be the most obnoxious movie ever. I don't think I would be able to handle that.
You don't want to see that, eh?
When it comes to Nintendo, though, they are so protective of their IP that it gives me a little bit of hope for the movie, just because they don't like doing things unless they're going to do it right.
That's usually true, but I mean, the most recent Pokemon games, I know it's more of a Game Freak thing, but it's under the purview of Nintendo. But they've rushed those to the point that they're apparently, at least virtually unplayable at launch, and they've sort of gone away from that very, very strict adherence to, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
Well, so far that's like the first major blunder with Pokemon, because most of the criticism of the games is like, they're playing it safe. It's super competently made games, still fun to play, but they're playing a little too safe. Whereas like the franchises of Mario and Zelda have been able to do something different with every iteration, but they also don't put out as many games as the Pokemon series typically does. So, but all the same, like I love that they're that hyper protective of their IP, because I mean, they are very good, and that's why they're generational. That's why little kids love it just as much as us in our 30s and 40s and 50s and whatever. So I don't know. I'm so looking forward to this. The early reviews for movies are typically always positive. Like, it's the fucking best movie I've ever seen. Woo!
Oh yeah, they had to do good reviews in the past to get invited to the pre-screening, and you have to be nice to the film to get invited back, which is I love journalism.
But all the same, with
journalism is happening here.
With the early reviews kind of towing the line between positive, a little nervous, but I don't know. We'll see tomorrow at midnight. I'll text you.
People aren't being ecstatic.
Right. They're not just like, this is brilliant. But we'll see. We'll definitely see.
And that can be an element of snobbery that sometimes comes in. So you do sometimes see when the audience and critic scores on Rotten Tomatoes, for example, are reversed, it's because the critics don't particularly like what the film is trying to do, as opposed to they don't really like the film for its own qualities or lack thereof. It's just that, you know, if you get an action blockbuster starring Chris Pratt, which is very oorah in favor of the US Marines, for example, most Hollywood critics are not ideologically wedded to that kind of proposition and are more likely to downvote it in a way that the audience doesn't. So maybe Mario just turns out to be an incredibly sort of masculine-oriented Save the Damsel style film, and it's just pissed off some vaguely feministic reviewers. Who knows?
But it's also... Oh, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I finished after you.
No, it's also a real game movie. So most of the reviewers in the cinema world don't play games.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, good point.
And it's, you know, it is very a game centric an animation, which I can see a lot of the critics not caring for at all compared to the politics that Pixar has gotten themselves into. So Pixar has always had a warm place, even in the Lasseter era, of being cinematic animation. So it felt like something that critics actually wanted to critique. This was part of their oeuvre of movies that they'd be willing to review. Whereas this movie doesn't fit any of that. I can't see them out of the gate, especially looking forward to this movie compared to Lightyear.
No, I mean a huge number of hell, it's almost a meme, isn't it? That media journalists are so bad at games they've actually got their own difficulty setting in games now. We have video. They say the level below easy is for games journalists.
Allow me to bring on our sixth member of this panel, so that my OCD can even out. Welcome our good friend, actually, Andrew. What up, buddy?
Yo, what up?
Yo,
I heard Mario. Now I'm here.
So were you texting furiously, Cynic, to try to get Andrew in? Like, need a six.
He was the first person I saw in the chat that said, "Let me in there," and I said, "Yep." DM'd him.
and then I sent yourself up to being spammed by Chato.
GIF that I always send.
Oh yes.
I love
so Andrew, are you looking forward to Mario? It sounds like you are.
Yeah, Mario.
Rock
That's
and
all I
roll.
have to say.
What's that?
Like,
that's really fair.
Mario, you know? I'm more excited for the Mario Kart sequence that's probably going to be in there. I'd actually much rather... All right, okay. Let's calm down in the chat here. But I'm excited for the Mario Kart sequence that I've seen in the trailers. That's mostly what I'm excited for. But yeah, I don't know if... I don't expect it to be groundbreaking or anything. It'll make money, definitely, because it's a Mario. Story, it'll probably be fine. I expect it to be kind of like... I have the same expectations I have it for the D&D movie. It'll be fun. Story, I don't know. But yeah, I'm excited for it.
I just looked at Rotten Tomatoes. It does make me nervous that the embargo on reviews has not been lifted yet, and it's coming out in like 36 hours. So that sucks. Oh no, I'm getting mixed signals.
How far in advance do they usually lift the embargo on a film?
At least 2 days. At least when they're super confident in the movie, you'll know, because it'll be out like 2 weeks beforehand.
They should have just made that sequel with starring Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. That's what the fans really wanted.
I've been waiting for that one, man. My name's Mario Luigi. Your name's Luigi Mario. Yeah.
Maybe they'll get a cameo. I mean, would people be satisfied then of our panel if it were just a collection of sort of Mario's greatest hits? You've got the Mario Kart bit, you've got like an underwater bit. It's just playing through the basic game mechanics and saying, hey, remember this? I mean, would that be enough for you, or would you want to see this actually try and start telling a big sort of Nintendo expanded universe creating story?
I think it could be. I think it doesn't have to be one or the other. It could just be in the middle for me. Like just try to have some semblance of a story like that. Of course, that's important. I'm always gonna. It's never gonna be enough for me to just be like, it was a trip down memory lane. You know, like that. That's not why I go to the movies. Like I go to the movies to be moved, to feel even from a Nintendo based film. So I hope that's the case. But at the same time, I don't need it to be some in-depth, we're launching a universe of all of these things. Like, just tell a nice story. Give me a nice arc.
I'm letting you guys go.
Oh, Keith's gonna melt down. That's the Keith face right there. I know that.
You know that face. I don't have confidence. I don't have confidence because I think studios and executives look at these films and they play just the hits because that's what the mass audience is going to gravitate towards. And it was sort of what I was kind of getting at at the beginning of this. It makes me sad that I don't have confidence that I think there will be no semblance of a film. And I would love an semblance of a film. To Ev's point, I don't think it needs to be grandiose. It doesn't need to be anything, groundbreaking, but really just pay attention to it. Have some ebbs and flows and maybe something I didn't see coming, again, rather than, just the Rolling Stones playing the greatest hits is what I assume this film will be. It'll just be like, yeah, do that. And like, great, they did it. And that's going to be enough for general audiences. And that makes me sad because the art of filmmaking slowly dies, which each movie version of this becomes successful. That just does that. And they go, oh, great. Why do we even care? It just makes people care less if it's successful. I don't know.
No, I like this guy. Completely on board with that. I mean, that's the whole argument about the regrettable success of something like Avatar. There are some interesting sort of storytelling potentials with Mario because Nintendo tries to apply sort of these narrative storytelling devices to level design and game design. I'm gonna butcher it. I think is it Kisho Tenketsu? I think is the sort of the narrative device that is more common in sort of Japan and in China. And Nintendo uses it to tell stories, but they also use it to tell level design. And it's the idea that you actually don't require a huge grand conflict as you typically see in sort of Western style films with a big baddie that you have to defeat, the hero's journey type thing. It's you start off with proposition or with character in Act 1. You get a second act, which is, I think, furthering development of character. Act 3 is surreal twist, which makes you doubt everything you've come to know before. And then Act 4 is kind of payoff, resolution to twist. But at no point throughout that have you had to go on this huge epic journey fighting against the evil big bad guy. And that's one of the reasons that Nintendo games feel so kind of creative and unique as well. It's why something like level design in Zelda is so quintessentially Zelda, and it's not anything that any other studio could do. I don't think you can adapt that perfectly for a cinema, certainly not a Western audience in the cinema, but it would be nice to think that someone at Nintendo is close enough to the writing team that they can say, look, these are our inspirations. How do you think you can maybe put a distinctive Nintendo spin on this film? Because if Mario comes out and it is just like another sort of cartoony action blockbuster of the type we've seen countless times in the last sort of decade, is it just going to miss its potential, maybe? Because we've seen it all before. It's Avengers, but it's with Mario instead.
Yeah.
It depends on how expanded you're able to make either of the Mario's emotional universe. Are you going to expand them to Shrek level? Kung Fu Panda love. That's what I'm going to be interested in seeing. If they don't, then it's just going to be a silly movie.
I think what's going to happen is it's going to be totally fine, and it's definitely not going to be incredible. Nintendo, when they're doing this stuff, from their track record so far with just the Pokemon movie, they want to play it as safe as possible because they don't want to make their products, their IPs look bad. And so you can do that. They didn't take chances like the Sonic, like Sega did with Sonic. And even that was relatively playing it safe. And I don't know, it's just interesting. Like a year ago, if a movie was just mid, that would be the catalyst for me of just freaking out in a review on it and saying this is unacceptable. Maybe I'm not so cynical anymore because I review movies for a living, so I love it now. And I'm like, this is okay. I really like this movie. It's fine. But I will understand the trajectory of where Hollywood's going to go if movies that are just okay keep reaping in like $1 billion, like if this does $1 billion or something. And that, like, I totally get what you're saying, Keith. It makes me worried too. But all the same, like, I just love Mario so much. I'm such a fanboy of it that if it's even just mid, I'll come out like, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with that.
Well, there's more at stake with this movie. It has to hit $1 billion because there's a huge bet on it at Universal Studios.
How much do they spend?
I'm not talking about the spend on the movie. I'm talking about its popularity to trigger the added investments they're making at Universal Studio.
Yeah.
This is what Disney is most afraid of, is the expanded. They already have Nintendo. They already have Mario World at Universal, but they're hoping that this supercharges it and expands it, and then Disney is shitting bricks.
Oh, I didn't know that was at Universal. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So this is part of a much bigger play that they need to make work. So when you're talking about it being conservative, that's probably one of the reasons that it is. The stakes on this movie are huge. It goes beyond just making your money back on the movie.
Yeah,
fair enough.
It's a big commercial to come to the park to experience.
Yes, there you go.
And that's why there's going to be 5 of these movies that are going to come over the next 8 years because they want you to go back to the park.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The 10 to 15 years. It's Harry Potter. It's like Harry Potter.
Yep.
It's, it's all their universes.
All the more reason for them to play it safe then with this movie.
Correct.
Yeah.
That would be the motivation.
All the more reason.
Yeah.
Or the
But you can play it so safe that it fails.
Yeah, or just doesn't leave enough of a mark, or everyone goes to see it once and no one goes back and no one buys the Blu-ray or downloads it or streams it afterwards, and then because as you say, they've not been ambitious enough with it and they've made it bland and generic. I don't get the sense. It's hard to say just from a trailer. I don't know that generic will be the main criticism of it. I hope that it won't be. But the theme park stuff is fascinating. I didn't realize that, but it makes an awful lot of sense. And Disney, a huge amount of Disney's sort of structural problems at the moment comes from the underperformance of its theme parks, and the underperformance of theme parks impacts its movie-making studios and capacities as well. And at the time that they're facing a huge, political strife with the DeSantis administration in Florida, Disney seems to have all the cards sort of stacked against it. And then if you do get Mario come out and do even reasonably well, enough to spawn this chain of sequels, to drive up attendance at Universal's parks, that there's another layer of the competition between those two studios that goes on. In which case, if it was a tentative suggestion earlier that we might get a Nintendo Cinematic Universe, I think having heard that, I'm now much more of the opinion that whether we like it or not, that's what we're going to get.
Yeah.
I envision a post-credit scene of the Mario Brothers movie where we're seeing like, oh, here's Link walking in, like tilt up,
everyone eating shawarma.
Yeah, exactly.
Luigi walks in and says, "You're part of a bigger universe now. You just don't know it yet."
Where's the pepperoni?
They wouldn't be eating shawarma, would they? They would be eating pasta.
There'll be some Italian, some salami.
The bar is so low as I look at, really, I mean, not to speak overly general, although that's what we do. As I look at a lot of new films, where it's like the thing that made me most excited about this trailer was that little character, the little cute character that was in prison and said, can't wait. The only way out is the sweet release of death. And that like genuinely made me happy because I thought like, oh, at least like that's something to cling to, like just a 0.5% of edginess to humor, because there's so many movies now. Yeah. The last
trailer was kind of hip. That Ghostbusters like commercial for them. I thought, okay, these guys are being quite interesting with their trailers. They're having fun. So who knows? I mean, if it's a real Nintendo animated movie, then the critics have no interest in it. And maybe that's why they're holding back, because they know that there's nothing they're going to be able to do that's going to make the critics happy with this. No,
I think
there's
that would be the ideal, wouldn't it? Is that not only does it turn out to be surprisingly good and heartfelt, but it also rubs it in the face of shitty media journalists who
That would
just
be
don't.
great.
Yeah, that's my ideal world. But because that would be ideal, it's almost certainly not going to happen.
Yeah,
But it would
and
be nice
that would be my thought why it's being held back, because it's just not a movie made for critics. Why bother?
I mean, that's pretty fair. Yeah. That would explain why why the embargo is still going too. Man, this has been such a roller coaster of emotions, this topic for me right now. I'm excited. Oh, I'm worried. Oh God, I'm excited. I'm worried.
Well, you're going to go see it tomorrow.
Yep. As long as it's of the same quality as the Pokemon movie and like the Sonic movie, which it definitely probably is going to, it's not going to hurt the IP at all. And I would say like the latest Pokemon games has hurt the IP more than the movie possibly could have that came out a couple of years ago. So, but all the same, like you said, Paul, like it needs to do well for the long game. For the theme park. I hadn't even thought of that.
This is why you have me on your show.
That's why.
Deep thought.
How bad do you
that
think
reference.
this movie would have to be to like actively damage the IP?
Oh
I mean,
God, Mario would have to pull a Gavin McGinnis, man. I don't think he's gonna do it.
Let's think of possibilities here.
It has to hit $1 billion.
How bad could we make this?
It has to hit the magic $1 billion.
Let me see what the Pokemon movie made, because I feel like
The
that
budget
was
for Mario is around 100 million. I saw.
It's not that bad.
So it'll profit regardless. But
yeah, that's not that bad. The Pokemon movie made $450 million worldwide.
This is a much bigger IP, I think, than Pokemon.
I don't know.
I don't know about that.
I don't know if it's a bigger IP, but the film has certainly been billed as much more integral to the IP, whereas the Pokemon film came out and it was very much just a triviality. This is a side story within a recognizable franchise. But
Maybe
it's
that's
not
what
something
I mean.
which
Yeah,
is...
no, you're right. It just didn't. The Pokemon movie wasn't promoted as, the giant Nintendo experience.
Yeah, I think the Pokemon games are more popular for sure. Like you can look at sales figures and figure that out. But
there are also
Mario is more well known. Like Mario is, it's an older IP, so it's far more generational. So and he's the flagship of Nintendo. So it's understandable why they are making this one seem so much more important.
I think in terms of hype, this is comparable to the Lego movie for a lot of people. Everyone knows what Legos are. And it's like Lego was a generational thing when it came out. And if this is half as good as the Lego movie, I will be content. Because the Lego movie is great. I love the Lego movie.
Yeah, that was a pretty good movie.
The first one was a nice surprise.
Yes. Second one.
Great. No, not so much.
Nope. And
They made a second one?
The second one, not to rain in the parade here, but the second one, the writer for that one is also writing this the Mario movie. So that's a bit warning.
Oh God, my emotions. Can we get on another topic? I'm dying.
All right.
No, are you
What
serious?
else is there to talk about?
Uh-oh.
Next up was another thing I'm more than happy to shit all over. The person who wrote Avatar 2 has been hired to write Fantastic Four, or at least rewrite the script.
Boy.
Take that as you will.
Wow.
First of all, who liked Avatar 2?
I didn't see it.
Perfect.
I turned it off.
Good.
I turned it
Good
off.
idea. Also a good idea.
I didn't even see it. I heard my friend
Great
slept through
idea.
it, so I didn't even bother.
I spent
You said it looked
4
cool. That was about
days.
it.
4 days I spent with that film, just continuously, just reading, watching it, writing, watching, writing. 4 days of Avatar, and yeah,
Loving every minute of it.
Well,
No.
your piece was so enjoyable that it was riveting. That was some of the best YouTubing that I saw.
That's
That
very
was
kind.
so much fun.
Of why you just liked it so much?
It's just I'm not filled with any kind of enthusiasm for any project that anyone involved in Avatar is now attached to. But the problems with Fantastic Four, they do sort of predate all of this, don't they? I mean, is this film? I lost track of its stage in development. Is it even going to get off the ground at any point, do we think?
The Fantastic Four?
They are so afraid to fuck this up that I think it's just going to be pushed back and back. We're like, oh yeah, actually, it's going to be Phase 8. That's where we're introducing Fantastic Four. I have no idea.
This thing has been relaunched more times than the Hulk.
Yeah, and I think it's like I get where they're coming from. Like, oh, Avatar, that's all about family. Fantastic Four is about family. Get the guy who writes about
Fast
family.
And Furious, then.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good
They actually say family in Fast and Furious.
Family.
You know what they say in Avatar the most, though? They say the word bro about 500 fucking times in Avatar.
Really?
Yeah. And they make it sucks. It makes me so mad.
You know,
Like,
if they want to do family for the Fantastic Four, get the guy who did The Sopranos.
There you go.
That would be they knew family. They also
Cynic.
bumped off a few.
I thought you were going to say the word they say the most is butthole, because somebody calls somebody a butthole at least 3 or 4 times in the first hour, and I think the 3rd or 4th time is when I shut the movie off. I was like, this is not. This does not make sense.
Imagining blue people say "bro" is very funny to me.
I had no idea.
They do, because they do this entire extended sort of mid-act sequence where they decide it's going to be a Californian surfer teen family drama. And so all of the teenage Smurfs, they just refer to each other as bro all the time, and regardless of context as well. Like, an entire ship can explode and everyone can be nearly dead, and then the person who comes in to save them announces his arrival with, "Bro, you okay?" It's like, oh,
Bro, that was crazy.
Just finish me off. Jesus. That's just not...
I don't know why you guys are concerned about the writing. That sounds.
I am gonna love this Fantastic Four movie if they say "bro" every time the city explodes.
I'm not sure I can handle it again. I'd probably turn it off. It's is Fantastic Four just doomed though? Because my sort of pet little sub theory for comic books is that there are some heroes, some sort of character types that you see in comic books that worked really well in comic books, and they worked really well in comic books in, say, the 1970s and the 1980s, but you can't very easily transfer those onto the screen in the 2020s. And the thing that prejudices me, I think, against Fantastic Four is not the last time they tried to reboot it. The time before that, was it the Silver Surfer who was the villain in one of those? And the Silver Surfer just feels so much like an out-of-date, out-of-place, out-of-time comic book villain that just doesn't work for an audience that hasn't sort of grown up when that was acceptable to do as a major character. Then I'm not familiar with the comic books though, so maybe he's much better on the comics.
So I'm a big Fantastic Four collector and fan. Yeah, I would say that's an interesting observation. Back when the Silver Surfer came, surfing was cool. Now it's kind of stupid. I mean, I agree with you. He's surfing in space. That being said, Fantastic Four was some of the worst Marvel comic book writing because they purposely forced this family infighting that was just dreadfully written for years up until the Galactus run. Then it was phenomenal and maybe the best run of any superhero run that I can recall. I haven't read everything, but you had the Silver Surfer taking Ben Grimm's blind girlfriend away. She falls for him. It was no jokes in it. It was dramatic. The Galactus is just a world eater. He feeds on worlds for his food. He has no animosity towards the planet Earth. And the Silver Surfer is his herald to find these planets to consume. And he's pissed off at him for not, well, like, what are you talking about? I don't give a shit about these humans. And then it's just so great. It's very Shakespearean. It's a great run and one of my favorites. It just elevated the Fantastic Four to God level in the world of comics for me. And I know they're going to screw it up. I just know. But that, other than that run, they're a terrible comic. It's a terrible comic.
It is.
Sorry.
And obviously, there's always talk of integrating the X-Men into the broader MCU as well, isn't there?
The X people.
The X people, sorry, yes, of course, we have to be up to date with the
X-them.
modern lingo. X them, X. Actually, well, X-Men is, if you add an E, then X-Men in a different sense.
Yeah.
Also kind of works. But is there any prospect of integrating? I mean, the film has to come out first, which is apparently beyond their abilities. I mean, is there any prospect for integrating the Fantastic Four at roughly the same time? I don't know what kind of crossover X-Men and Fantastic Four have in the comics or anything like that, but
They
Not
do
really.
crossovers. Well, Reed Richards and Professor X. Well, I don't know. I've read more of the modern stuff from like 2000s on.
I haven't.
That's what I was talking about last night. Was Jonathan Hickman's run on the in the mainline and the mainline Marvel comic series, the 616. He wrote like 40 or 50 issues, and that's where I really liked the Fantastic Four. It was deathly
What
serious.
years was that?
I think it was like 2009 to
Okay, I had already left
2012.
comics by then.
Oh, okay, yeah. But it was really serious, and it made Doctor Doom. I always thought he was goofy, and then I walked away from that series being like, "Oh, he's like the most badass villain in all of comic books." But they are not going to do something like that because it's actually serious. It's actually, and it is the perfect way to do something that involves the multiverse, but is grounded because it's so family centric. It's about the four characters, so it's the perfect blueprint of what to do, and they absolutely won't do it because it doesn't suit their stupid ass. Everyone talks the exact same and has the same quips style.
But they could say bro.
yeah.
Is there a compiled compilation version for sale?
Yep. There are two. They're called Omnibus. They're hardbacks, and you can order them on Amazon now. I think they just reprinted them. I like them so much. You guys are gonna laugh, but like I'm such a massive comic book geek that for the Omnibus collection, it was out of print, and I didn't want to wait, and I paid like $450 for a copy of it. Like that's how good it was.
And who was the writer for it?
Jonathan Hickman.
Jonathan. Okay, I'm game.
Yeah, it's really good.
I have a bunch of the early ones, and one was worth $900, except I scribbled on it. Worth nothing. Worth nothing.
I have a couple Spider-Man omnibuses. I have 3 of them, and then I have 3 Star Wars ones too.
Which Spider-Man ones do you have?
The original.
Oh, you were collecting the Amazing Spider-Man run?
Yeah, the amazing. Yeah,
nice.
I have the whole. I think I'm missing it's either the 3rd or the 2nd one because that one was just too expensive.
Yeah, they reprint them all. You'll get it
I
eventually.
have the She-Hulk's omnibuses.
Do you the Dan Slott runs?
Yep.
Yeah. We've got comic book geeks here. Woo!
Former.
I heard She-Hulk and my body retracted.
I have
I'm
the
like,
She-Hulk
no, stop!
season 1
Stop.
box set, DVD box set of She-Hulk.
I hadn't been in a comic book store for 30 years. We had the Silver Snail in Toronto, and then I walked into one in Burlington, and I felt like it was locked in amber. I went, wait a second. These are exactly the same guys I saw 30 years ago.
Well, I'm reliably informed by the show's defenders.
And over there in episode 53, where she went to the thing to do.
I'm informed by the show's defenders that She-Hulk was the most comic book accurate of all of Marvel's adaptations.
No.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, Simon Pegg, I think, did that in his weepy monologue from his car.
Simon Pegg.
Simon Pegg, all these.
Oh yeah, didn't that guy say something about? He was like, She-Hulk is so funny, and I'm just like, all right.
It's the best thing since Blazing Saddles. He says,
reading.
It's the best thing since the
He really said
third
that?
Star Trek that I wrote.
What you couldn't see was the man in the
bottom of his
balaclava on the back seat. I think that was probably the reason. The gun pointed to his head.
Yes, it's in the back of it.
But our friends from the Bluff Council, I don't know how big you are on sort of Fantastic Four lore. What would you want to see if the film ever got to the front and actually got made and got to the stage where we can actually see the damn thing. Is there anything in particular you would want it to do? How would it differentiate itself from, I don't know, the X-Men would be probably a close example.
Keith, you want to take it?
I think it was touched on before just briefly, but for me, because I care more about the films than I do the comic books. I apologize. I'm not a big comic book person. I know there's a rabid fan base of comic book folks out there, and that's great. But when you adapt a comic book or adapt anything to a film, I expect it to be a film and a film first. That's kind of talking a little bit about Mario as well. I think Marvel in general has sort of lost its way a little bit in the sort of finding the things that ground these stories to make them more relatable to us common folk. Because people eating worlds and people surfing in the cosmos or things like that's fun to see and that's exciting, and there could be a whole new level of drama introduced because of these fantasy and sci-fi elements that you're adding. But if there's no real heart, if there's no real grounding nature to these characters, if I don't get to know these people in a meaningful way, then it just kind of all floats away from me. That's my personal opinion. So the thing that I just want from Marvel movies going forward in general, and specifically the Fantastic Four, if it's going to be about family, if that's sort of their nucleus, thing that drives them, makes them unique, then find a real tangible way to ground that in a meaningful way. And the rest of the shit around it can be fantastical and crazy and out there and fun and entertaining. But there's got to be something for me to hold on to emotionally. And if I don't have that, I get really sad and I cry myself.
Yeah, I think I'm super fascinated by how both the Fantastic Four and the X-Men will be sort of integrated into this thing, and if it will be in like they've already existed in this universe and we just haven't known about them yet, or if it's going to be some sort of like reset multiversal introduction, or like that to me will dictate a lot of how good those films are, because the MCU has gotten so existential and just like out there and like all these different, like Keith is saying, so hard to grab onto anything real, that if the Fantastic Four is just introduced and they're already a team, and when we already like they have a shared history and adventures and stuff, like, and they're just a part of this multiverse now, and they're like that's going to be tough for me to grab onto. But I can probably imagine that fans of the comic books and fans of the movies that as it have existed so far are probably tired of seeing like the origin story. So that's a tough balancing act, I'm sure, for this writer of Avatar 2 and team.
It's also the big missed opportunity of Multiverse of Madness, because we have reached the stage in the MCU's sort of continuous narrative where it's implausible to start introducing new superheroes already established, because the question is then, well, where have they been for the last 15, 20 years, and why weren't they involved? The multiverse gives you kind of like this cheat way of introducing characters like that, because they could have been well established in their own universe. You finally got this narrative device, which is incredibly lazy, but you could at least have used it to, refresh the stock of characters. This is the time you introduce heroes that we know exist but haven't been able to see yet, without conflicting with the past narrative or making it implausible that they weren't around before. And instead they sort of half did that and then had Wanda kill them all. So yeah, that didn't go well.
Yeah.
Is your recollection of the first Wonder Woman and also the first Steve Rogers Captain America movies, weren't they quite serious?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the Captain America ones
enough.
I mean, there was the one comic relief secretary in Wonder Woman, and then there was not a lot of comic relief in Captain America. And
No, the first Captain America though was super pulpy.
Right.
There was that element to it. So like where it didn't have that what would become the very quippy Marvel humor shtick. It also wasn't. I wouldn't say it was a serious movie, because it seemed like one of those serialized pulp movies of old. It felt like it was going for that style.
I mean, my recollection of the Fantastic Four was they had the family issues independent of when they had to bear down and deal with the problem at hand. And then they kind of coalesced into a very serious group of people. And there was a shit ton of gear porn from the dad, not Ben,
Reed.
Reed Richards. So this is something that's completely lost on Disney Marvel now, is just gear porn. And he was making stuff and inventions and changing things, and he was very Tony Starky.
Right. Well, he's the smartest man in the world, right?
Pardon me?
He's the smartest man.
The smartest man in the world. That's his title, moniker.
Yeah, they're not going to let him be the smartest person in the family.
Oh no, that'll be Sue.
That was staggering as well in Multiverse of Madness when they introduce him, and I think they even say he's the smartest man in the world. And his first move is to tell Wanda exactly what their power sets are and how to kill them. It's just the smartest.
They didn't say he was a tactician.
I hated that scene.
They're going to wreck all of that, obviously, in the Fantastic Four. I would love a very serious Fantastic Four, and if it's the couple that end up doing it, and if it's to the level of that horror film that they did together, I'd be all for it.
I would be
Quiet
too.
Place.
The Quiet Place. I mean, they were talking about being the Reed Richards and the Sue Storm in that, and that would have been awesome.
Yeah, I would have accepted that. They tried to go the serious route with what year was it? 2015. That was a horror movie. The Fantastic Four reboot that they did.
Oh, it's terrible.
That was an abomination.
That was a horror movie for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, all the wrong reasons. But they were trying to actually do I'll bring it up again. The Ultimate Marvel Universe that was the reset of everything for Marvel, the offshoot in like the year 2000. Their Fantastic Four reboot. That's what the MCU was really trying to emulate a lot. Like they were trying to keep like the classic elements of the look and feel with the MCU of like the 616, and then story wise they were like, oh, the Ultimate Universe is very modernized, let's kind of try and adapt that. That's why Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury in the comics. Like it was meta. Samuel L. Jackson was the basis for Nick Fury's character. They had to pay for his likeness because in the Ultimate Marvel Universe he looked just like Samuel L. Jackson. But it went horribly wrong with the Fantastic Four reboot, and Marvel's established this stupid ass quippy humor now, so it's just there's not going to be a serious Fantastic Four movie.
Alas. I think Paul, I know you've got to run for a prior engagement, but thank you very much for being with us. Do you want to, before you go, just tell everyone like where they can find you and what's coming up next?
Call me Chato. That's what I'm doing. I've got 1984 TV Guide I'm crunching through. It takes me a long time to do those, but I love doing them. Nothing much at all. Stuff comes to my head and I do it. I never know what comes into my brain. It's a marvelous, strange, crazy thing in there. So
it keeps everything fun and exciting.
I think I've what was it? I've got some crazy stuff. I've got a bit, a sketch that's coming up. That's quite insane. I've got another one coming up where a country music singer who's huge finds out that his dad is still alive, who comes back into his life, and all his hits were based on the fact that his dad was dead, and so he comes to kill his father. Is it the only way I can keep writing my hurting country music songs, Dad, is to kill
Amen,
him.
brother.
Well, you go ahead and kill me. That's okay. Stop being so cooperative, Dad. I gotta, damn it.
Oh, there was no. I'm going to butcher this because I don't remember it properly. There were no jokes like what happens when you play a country and music song in reverse. It's like, well, the dog comes back to life. His wife joins him again. He stops being an alcoholic and he finds his new job.
Anyway, so that's it for me. I'm just working to hit that 100,000 subscribers. That's really kind of my short-term goal, and then after that, I've got nothing. It was never a goal that I anticipated coming, and now it's here. You can give me advice, Little Platoon. What's it like in the rarefied world of passing that finish line?
Well, the little silver plaque makes a good sort of dinner tray, so it's nice. It's nice to have, yeah. But
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say thank you again for taking the time to join us. The link for your channel and everything will be in the description as well. So anyone in chat who wants to give you a hand jumping over 100,000, I'm sure they will.
That would be. I'll be using mine for crudités. And thank you very much for inviting me, everyone. And I'll join you again if you need me. And you guys are very articulate, and you're talking about stuff that I love also. And looking forward to the next episode. And I'll see you next time.
See you soon.
Thanks for joining, Paul.
Have a good one.
To keep things even, to the 4 boxes, I also need to leave. My light died. I have to run. But it's a pleasure to speak with you guys for just a little bit. Thank you for on. Ev can speak poorly on both of our behalves.
That was great to have you. Thank you for taking the time as well. We'll have you back on.
Of course, we'd love it.
Yeah. Take care, Keith.
See you in hell, Keith.
See you in hell.
Then there were 4.
And then there were 4. Right,
this is not as diverse of a cast as we had last week.
Yeah, this is a problem. All right, someone's got to go.
We had a woman, and it wasn't a cat. It was a fox. Altiori's a fox. I got that right. Fox. Eventually, yes. Yeah, well, it's okay. I can identify as a woman for the next however long we're on. So
perfect.
Then,
yeah. Change your picture to just some woman.
I'll put a wig on it.
Yeah.
Speak up here for the rest of the stream.
Yes.
There was another thing I wanted to bring up, unless anyone wants to keep talking about Fantastic Four.
No, I don't think even they want to keep talking about it.
I'm very curious to see what they do with Spider-Man, if they do any crossover at all.
Yeah, I like that they're kind of taking their time with this now, because they're like, they ended what they did on a good note, so let's not
I feel like
fuck this up.
If they did this any earlier, they'd be like, hey, they're Fantastic Four, they're coming, Spider-Man's here. Get ready, boys.
I mean, Spider-Man had a lot of crossovers with the Fantastic Four. Make that work. Him and Johnny Storm are friends.
Torch. I like those.
Yep. There was an article I found right before the show started, and I have to bring this up. Anthony Mackie is all about ending racism. And he's going to do it.
Someone is here to do it.
And he's going to do it by playing Captain America. Allow me to read from this article. He said, I think the weight of a black Captain America is the same as the weight of a woman playing Captain Marvel, which is the same weight as any character of any race representing an underrepresented people. Race or sex, I should say. We're going through a transitional phase. Every 40 to 50 years, something will happen that will turn our country and the world on its axis. We didn't see 2020 being that, but it just so happened to be that. So the idea of having a black Captain America, I feel like it's more gas on that fire to burn down the systematic nonsense that we were brought up in and we lived in up until now. It's a new day. It's a new time. Homophobia, racism, sexism is part of the past and a part of that system that we can no longer allow to be recognized as our country or our understanding. All of it puts us in a position to be better people, to be better parents, and to live a better future. And you need to do better, Senator. So I think that's just part of the fold if that were to happen. Thoughts on that shit?
Oh, for goodness sake.
That sounds so out of his element. I would have never imagined something like that coming out of his mouth. I don't know. I guess he seems very articulate, and that doesn't seem like something that he would say. But also, I don't watch a lot of interviews with people, and I've only seen like a couple with them.
It's just he cites the importance of a woman playing Captain Marvel. I would have thought that's proof against his position. That's proof of what happens in the backlash that you engender if solely for reasons of gender politics you gender swap a character, and it just so happens that you write that character terribly and turn one of your major heroes into arguably one of the biggest villains in the entire Avengers run by making her a psychopathic bitch. But that's just me, apparently. It's not enough just to say, well, a black man is Captain America now. A, what are you even trying to solve with that? And B, what are you going to do with that character? Because that's not enough. That's that is a very good example of how you inject modern day politics into what should be a timeless universal story, and basically just invite people not to like it. And then it's an excuse for them to say, well, if you don't like what we've done with this character, which is to say the way we've terribly written this character, that's because you're a racist, because the whole point of him being there was to target racism in the real world.
And is he giving the movies the benefit of the doubt that he thinks they're already going to be well written, so this is just like the added bonus and the responsibility that him as a black man is taking on?
I don't know if he cares.
He gets his paycheck.
He gets his paycheck, and also a lot of the people who spout lines like this don't particularly care, because they see the importance of representation as just being, look, we've got a black guy playing a major character. That's job done. Doesn't matter if the film's any good. We've accomplished our mission. The mission is representation. Representation has nothing to do with the stories those characters are placed in. It just has everything to do with, does your screen look what Hollywood considers to be adequately diverse?
Everything you just said, you took the words out of my mouth. Is that representation is obviously, we all like, incredibly important. These things have meaning. We should celebrate, I think, the progress made in a lot of these arenas, but representation alone is not enough. This goes back to the Blue Beetle a little bit, where it's like, it's the same movie we've seen 1,000 times, but now it's a Latino character, and that matters. Like, that is important, but it's not enough on its own to. And if anything, like to your point, if the movie is shitty, if like the execution is poor, then it's almost counterproductive in some ways, because it's like, oh, well, then you're just saying that, like, oh, this isn't, the quality doesn't matter. What matters is that you feel like placated to, and that's offensive on its own. Like, so
I can't add on to that. I mean, you just said it too. That's the thing, right? Is it's we've said it before, say it again. It's a perfect defense, though, of if you don't like the movie, racism, which is an absurd proposition, which I would say, hey, well, you only made the movie with diversity and representation in mind, and you forgot to write a good story on top of it. So, and a lot of times, every time almost that these movies are made, it's the worst fucking stereotypes of whatever culture they're trying to represent, like, that you can possibly imagine. And if you pointed out you're racist.
Oh god, like Wakanda Forever. I mean, Wakanda, where they farm rhinos and they open force fields by banging water drums. And you think that this is just, it's not even a crude stereotype. It's just, it's an insufferable sort of, it's a very African American idea of what Africa is to begin with, but it's also just an incredibly infantilized depiction of what, black characters can be. It's like, what does it mean to be an African person? Well, you wear loincloths. In the case of actual In Wakanda Forever, you throw spears and one of you makes a monkey noise, which used to be considered racist, but when they do it, it's fine. It's pathetic. It's infantilizing, but it's also infantilizing because when you start doing the race swapping thing, or the gender swapping thing, or turning established heroes gay because there's not enough gays in mainstream entertainment, obviously, that is itself kind of infantilizing, because what you're doing is you're elevating somebody on the grounds of race, and you're saying, look how much progress we've made because we've just stuck a black actor and called him Captain America. It's like, he hasn't actually, the character himself sort of mirrors the lack of journey that the actor is going on. The character has just been used as a symbol and as a token, and it's not any longer trying to earn your place. Whereas, compare it to Black Widow, but not the film, but the character Black Widow. Everyone likes Black Widow. Black Widow was a great character. She earned her place in people's affections despite being a relatively low-tier hero because of the character work they did for her. She wasn't there just because she was a woman. She was there because the character needed to be there, and they had ideas for what to do with that character, which is the exact opposite of the approach they took with Captain Marvel, which is why Black Widow is popular and Captain Marvel is not.
And Black, like you said, Black Widow earned her place, whereas this, it's shit, man. It's right in line with this fucking generation where it's like, you don't earn shit. You just put yourself there and say, respect me and accept me. And it's the complete backwards way of making progress.
Yeah, they cannot fail. The audience can fail, the audience can fail to appreciate the great strides forward made for the cause of racism, anti-racism, sorry, and representation. But the actor themselves, the writers, the films they're in, they can't fail. Their failures are always externalized to them, which makes them, because in their own minds they are inured against criticism like that. They have no real obligation to try and avoid the criticism by actually telling a good story. So it's self-defeating, because you're only going to invite more criticism by assuming that you are beyond criticism.
It's interesting too. Like I am like 8 years ago, I would have never thought of myself as anything but a pretty liberal human being. And I can't remember who was saying it recently. I was listening to something and they were talking about how like culturally what happens is like they nudge a little bit and you know, because it's only a little bit, you accept, and they nudge a little bit more and then you accept. And then by the time you're, you know, a few years down the line, you're nowhere near where your starting position was. And you're like, how the fuck did I just get here? And it kind of seems that way, where like, I remember when, as a comic book fan, Ta-Nehisi Coates was writing Black Panther. And I was told that it was a very, very, very good comic book. And so, you know, as a good liberal, I was just like, yeah, it is. And no, it fucking sucked, actually. It was a really bad comic book reflecting. But I was like, you know, I was just like, oh, yeah, like it's supposed to be good. And it really wasn't. And that's the kind of like slight nudging along the lines. And then we get to here. And it's like an entirely different. I'm like, oh, this is what liberalism is now? Well, I guess that's not me anymore.
I feel like a major problem, just again speaking in such generalities, is like films as a whole, like large studio, quote unquote, popcorn films, to me have just been, descending in quality. And it's just so much more about like the mass appeal. What can we do to make this appeal to the masses and to like trend, right? What can we do to get those meme-worthy moments these last few years especially? What are people going to talk about on Twitter? What's going to get us positive write-ups and think pieces that will also be shared, and then we can all pat each other on the back and go home. And so the film itself is not as much of a concern seemingly from someone on the outside. And now when you inject that now with like kind of sociological issues of the day, then that just is like another way to fit into that, for them to fit that into the puzzle, where it's like, oh, we're just care about messaging, and we care about attention and retweets and trending for a couple of weeks, and then we can all feel good and move on to the next one. It's just one more ingredient of just like what's going to help right now, not what's going to make a great film necessarily. Again, very generally speaking.
I support current thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and the side effect of current thing and obsessing over current thing is that current thing is only going to be current for a certain amount of time. And if you go back in 20 years and rewatch Star Trek The Next Generation, it's still a great show. If you go back in 20 years and watch Star Trek Discovery, the fact that it's so obsessed, well, it was never a good show anyway, but the fact that it's so obsessed with current thing just makes it out of date. The more you focus on conveying current day, present day, very particular political issues, the quicker your thing will go out of date. And there's no rewatchability, there's no lasting cultural value in that either, because you're so obsessed with your present time that you're not even trying to tell anything approaching a universal story. And the same thing applies with characters as well. No one's going to remember Anthony Mackie's Captain America in 10 years' time. No one will, because it's just a shit. It's not a character even. By contrast, in 10, 20 years' time, people will still go back and watch the old Avengers films, and they will still probably be of the mind that, yeah, Steve Rogers is Captain America, actually, because that's the one they actually did the character work to support.
Was there no, forgive me for not knowing, but did Falcon never inherit the shield in any of the comic book
iterations? He did, but all this really is the exact, they're just doing the movie version of what happened 8 years ago, and basically it was the comic book version of this, the backlash to everything, you're a racist because you don't like this thing. It really was that. It started around 2015. And that's exactly what I was talking about with like the incremental nudging of like, oh yeah, of course this is a good comic book. Falcon is Captain America now, and he's black, and that's important. And so all you're seeing now is it's like when they talk about how like ideology started in at universities and then spilled over into the public years later. That's the comic book equivalent. It was called Comicsgate. It was the exact same thing. If you didn't like the comic book, if you didn't like the fact that they transitioned Captain America to a black guy, or that they made Hulk into Asian Hulk, it's because you're a piece of shit, actually, not because the comic's a piece of shit. You are, sir. And that's what you're getting now in the movies, except it's you know, comic books only sell X amount, very, very minuscule compared to movies in their box office. So now you're actually seeing what was happening 8 years ago on a much grander scale.
It's not an encouraging thought, is it, that the movies are just about 10 years behind the comics? So what's happening in comics today will be in the movies in 10 years' time. Because as far as I understand anyway, comics have gone slightly, even more wackily off the rails in the 8 years since that. So yeah, in future, whatever, if the MCU is still running, then you've got all of the quite crazy, like the pregnant Joker run or whatever the hell that was. That's coming. Yeah, we get to watch that on the films in 10 years' time. Hooray. I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait.
Great for views.
Big Coffin Hunter. To offer a counterpoint, most of the children at the school I work at believe Miles Morales is Spider-Man. You don't see a lot of Peter Parker nowadays, which is hilarious. And actually, my girlfriend Brittany, she works at a school too. She can attest to that kind of shit too. And what's fascinating is... Sorry, I interrupted. You carry on. I was gonna say, like, yes, he's at least his own character, and I do like Miles. Like, I don't dislike him or anything like that. But all of he doesn't have any of his own stories really, and any of them that do exist are just a twisted version of Peter Parker's story that's already happened. It really is. Like the Spider-Verse saga and all that bullshit. Like Peter Parker did it first. The Prowler character that is most associated with Miles Morales, that's a fucking Peter Parker villain. Like, it's not an original, it's all derivative, and it's all just it's still like just a fucking belly flop of the exact same thing that happened in the real Spider-Man's legacy. So it's still not good enough.
It's not, but I think the difference would be that they are at least, you know, they might be repeating stories, but they are still telling stories with him. He is still kind of a character. He's probably the most popular of these later generations, precisely because they might just be retelling old stories with him, but they are telling stories with him. He is his own kind of character, which makes him slightly more memorable than others who are just being sort of cut and pasted in.
Well, then what's the ideal way in your view that what could rectify that?
Movies.
To me, like Miles Morales is a good example. He's a good starting position of like, okay, we got this. Now write new original stories for him. Stop just taking what already existed and fucking flipping it around and making it, you know, the exact same thing, but with a twist. Stop Shyamalan-ing this shit. And again, it's just another, I've said it a million times. I'm just like, okay, do diversity, do all this shit. Just give me a good story then. Stop making derivative shit. Like you're everything everywhere all at once. I feel like I bring this up every week is like a perfect way of doing it, which is you have a super diverse cast of characters, but all the same, the themes are universal. So it doesn't matter. Like you can have a Chinese immigrant who sees themselves on screen, but me as a fucking mid-30s white boy, I can watch that and be like, oh, I relate to this shit. This is so good. Because it's a universally appealing theme that everyone can connect to. There are ways to do it right. There are plenty of examples, and no one wants to fucking pick up what's obviously been put down right in front of you.
Well, that goes full circle to something we talked about earlier, is just like doing what's safest, right? Like all of these films, all of this IP is so monumentally financially important to these huge companies that it must be considered, sadly, like a risk to write an original character, to create a new IP, so to speak, for a diverse cast, when you can just be like, well, but here's the shield, or here's the Iron Man suit, or, you know, like that's going to be what sells. But people or companies are adverse to risk.
They are. It's a good point, but it's classic just monopoly behavior. The MCU has cornered the entire market for such a long time, but it's run out of ideas, and it's now so afraid of losing its position that it's guaranteed that eventually it will lose its position. It'll lose its position to smaller upstarts who are, I mean, Eric July is probably quite a good example. People who are saying, look, I'm not satisfied with the fact that you're just repeating storylines and cut and pasting one character into a different title. I'm going to do something new now. Here's a new idea. This is going to get more popular because I'm doing what you did do originally to make yourself popular to begin with. You are creating new stories with new characters in them, which people actually care about and invest in, and you're not just trying to cling on to your position as the monopoly by offering the audience the same thing and the same thing and the same thing again. So in a way, it's a bit pathetic. It's sad to think that there are so many great stories you could still be adapting in the MCU. It's sad to think that it might be in terminal decline because it lacks imagination, but those rules are kind of universal themselves. If you lack imagination, you will be replaced eventually by someone who has it. And yeah, if you want to ally that to the cause of representation, what you have to do is you have to create a gay character, and you have to do exactly what you did to make Captain America popular with that gay character. In other words, make him a character first, his sexuality is incidental, and you give him great stories and great adventures and great trouble and strife and knockdowns and relationships, and put the same time and effort in over the course of decades as you spent on your established characters to establish them to begin with. Which I just made it sound incredibly easy. Obviously, that's an incredibly difficult, long, and expensive process, but that's the answer, I guess.
Writing is hard. Creating a new character is hard, and that's I mean, it's funny, but it's also fucking true. Like, it really is. But take a look at the criticism we've had for the past year now, which is a lot of these new characters have what if 20 years ago would have been a fucking supervillain origin story, but now that's kind of like what the generation is. It's like you don't go from a character who works their ass off and works really hard to get to where they need. You don't have like even billionaires like Tony Stark and Batman learned lessons, and Batman had to learn how to fight and all this bullshit. But instead, now you have characters who are supervillain origin stories, who are superheroes. And it's me, and they already have their powers, and they're already the bestest ever. And it's just, I don't know, it goes right in line with the culture. So I don't know how this is ever going to change unless it's a culture shift.
Stranger things have happened.
Could happen. Ev, did you need to leave, sir?
I do, unfortunately.
No worries.
This has been a wonderful time spent with you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you for setting aside the time. It's been great to have you on. Do you want to do a quick plug before you head off?
Always want to do a quick plug. No, we are the Bluff Council. Those of you that have been on for a little bit watching, you met Keith, my partner. We love chatting about movies. Primarily, we talk about a lot of older films, but we're kind of branching out and trying a lot of new things. We have casual conversations about films that end up getting really intense, and Keith and I are very close friends, so we can say really hateful things to each other and still forgive each other for it the next day. So we really appreciate you guys having us on, and come check out the channel if you're so inclined.
We will certainly do so, and the link for that will be in the description as well. But yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Of course. We'll see you guys again.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Andrew.
Rightio.
Andrew.
Me.
Pitch in.
What?
Pitch in. There's only 3 of us now.
There are. Well, I'm thinking we've been going for 2.5. We've got some super chats lined up.
Yeah, we do.
So unless there's anything else that you found that you thought we should cover, I reckon we move on.
That was the last thing I really wanted to cover. So I'm cool to get to super chats if you'd like.
Sounds like a plan to me.
You want to take control of that? Pull them up.
I can
Instead of both of us doing it at the same time and fumbling over everything.
Rightio. So, Mr. Luca for £1.99. Did DC die today for good? I'm guessing is that in reference to Blue Beetle?
Yeah.
The Power Ranger movie?
Yeah, essentially, man. Yep.
So yes is the answer to that one. Oh, well,
yeah, I think so.
The hype for that movie is so strange. I don't really get it.
Like, is there any?
I mean, like, you got people on Twitter like, it's comic accurate suit, guys. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But
That's
like
what matters.
they had a trailer for the trailer all in the span of 2 days. So it's just weird. They're very desperate to get this out and like build weird Twitter hype where they see the first trailer and they're like, ooh, look, we got the poster and they're saying the thing's coming out tomorrow. Yay. And then they come out with the teaser trailer to the trailer, and then which is like 30 seconds, and they're like, look, it's comic accurate pseudo, and it's George Lopez. And then that happens, and then 24 hours later, the trailer comes out, and they're like, Batman's a fascist, a gabagoo, and then now we're here. It's so strange.
Calling Batman a fascist is probably quite a good way to drum up online interest in what
That's
you're doing.
true. That's probably why that line was in there.
It's the only thing I've heard about it that I am interested in. I want to find out how.
It's very, it is very Gen Z in the editing, and like the song is I don't know, maybe I'm just weird, but the only place I know that song from is TikTok.
Oh God.
So not saying that
things are...
it's a good song, but it's a big like TikTok song snippet. I don't have TikTok. I probably should have TikTok. No, I'm not going to get TikTok. I'm going to stick to
I don't have a I don't have a functional TikTok account, but I did post on my Movie Cynic TikTok that we were doing the show, and I talked shit about TikTok in the description.
Oh, so half of our 700-ish viewers are probably employees of the Chinese Communist Party. Fantastic.
Let's go.
We're screwed.
For $10 from Daniel Trump, we see you there, Mr. Trump. Little Platoon and guys, I appreciate your opinions and reviews. Keep up the good work. Even if I sometimes disagree, it's always enlightening. Thank you very much. I like when people disagree. It makes for more interesting conversations. Even though I'm right. From Mighty Porkin Plower Strange, Jonathan Majors is the perfect phase 4 MCU villain because he beats them. You missed allegedly off of there. I think he was just practicing his martial arts for the next film. That was all he was doing.
I don't know, man. The text messages that were released that were supposed to, like set him free were so damning. I was like, how could you possibly
I missed
think,
that completely. They've released the text messages.
How could you think these fucking text messages were going to help your case, man? It sounds like a battered woman being like, I'm really sorry you hit me. Like, it was totally my fault. Like,
oh, yeah, that doesn't sound good at all.
Oh, it's awful.
More headaches for Marvel. Great.
Yep.
Altiori, very generous for $30. Just stopping in real quick to send some support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Altiori. You're awesome.
Dave N, €10. Platoon, can we call you Posh Mauler? You can if you want to. Yeah. From our friend, whose name is not Rebecca Gold. Well,
it's not.
It's Ian, but I like that he goes by Rebecca Gold because he's not usually in favor of the gender transitioning stuff. But he was on last week, so go and check out Rebecca Gold because he's doing great work with his film. Here's some money. Please pass it on to the Blue Boy and tell him to get his hair back to blue. Yeah, what's going on there? Why have you?
Hey, listen, I joined the stream and watched, and I saw your hair change, and I could not. What happened? Explain.
What happened? I don't know. It was just on a web. Now I have to wear like blue stuff. I have to wear blue stuff to make up for it. It'll be blue again in a few months. Just give me my
months.
Well, give me my this is my natural hair color ish. So just like let me have it for a little while. Blue is my brand, so I have to stay blue, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was gonna say at least you haven't done channel artwork and stuff.
Oh yeah, I know, not a big deal that everything's blue haired.
Thinking Man's counterpart for $10. Do you want to read this one?
Sure. If you want a good take on the D&D movie from someone in D&D culture, check out Dungeon Craft analysis of the movie. What is the WTC? What is that?
Wizards of the Coast.
Okay. Wizards of the Coast kind of went out of their way to alienate their fan base before release.
They did. There's the whole controversy around, is it 5e, and the fact that the Wizards of the Coast is now sort of pushing conversations about, are orcs black people and is it racist to hate them?
Well, didn't they get bought by Warner Brothers? Because Warner Brothers owns the IP of Dungeons and Dragons, right? I've heard something about them getting bought by Warner Brothers, but I might be completely incorrect.
I'll take your word for it.
Actually,
don't.
Do not leave anything I say.
But yeah, no, they did. It's one of those. It's another sort of area of sort of nerd culture which has come into conflict with particularly modern politics and sensibilities. So yeah, it's too much talk about is there gender parity between the races and are orcs actually black people and all the rest of that. It's a huge distraction, and I think it's one of the reasons that the initial sort of reaction to the Dungeons and Dragons film or the trailers for that was quite mixed, if not hostile, was because, as far as I understand it anyway, not being a part of it, the Dungeons and Dragons fan base is not especially happy with the owners of that franchise at the moment for what they're doing. So yeah, don't alienate your fans, folks. That's a start.
Do it. A tip on making fan bases: do not alienate them.
Don't piss them off. Don't call them all racist. Tom Abella is a man of few words, but we thank you for your $5.
That's the best comment all night.
It's the quickest one we got through. Simon Grindle for £5. Andrew, would you like to read this one out?
I can't read. The Mario film should be like the film Head by the Monkees and the Beatles animated Yellow Submarine. Super trippy plus surreal.
I have not seen it.
Yellow Submarine is it's fucking whacked. It's awesome.
Well, look, if all else fails, you can get high and go and watch Mario, and then I'm sure it'll be much more trippy as an experience.
Sounds like a deal. We'll do. Thanks.
Yeah, you actually will, won't you? From Mr. Taco about it for $5. A bit behind, but I think people are critical of superhero stuff now. Number one, it's dominated for a while. Number two, people have grown accustomed to the bad writing. That's one of two. Two is writing is harder to discern unless super obvious than something more visual, which is why it might take longer for people to pick up on it. I suppose so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I think people can walk away not feeling right about something and not understanding why. And and for most people, it's a movie, so they're not going to sit and like analyze it. Most people just want it for entertainment, and they can still have the same reaction you and I would, but they'd walk away not wanting to give it too much thought about why it was bad, but just being like, yeah, that wasn't very good.
Yeah, like, why are you criticizing it? John Wick was entertaining.
Fuck you.
Hey, listen. John Wick was fun.
It was fun, which is very silly.
Listen, many men, big gun, me happy.
Revenge.
His dog died. It's vengeance. Mr. Talk About It for a further $1.99. Jonathan Haidt covers this stuff really well. Jonathan Haidt covers a lot of stuff really well. So yes, recommend. I've got one of his books actually, which I've been meaning to read, and I can't remember what the title was, but definitely worth it. And finally, Movie Cynic, do you want to take this one away?
Sure. Vinyl Morpheus for $9.99. Thank you. Disregarding cape shit and other corporate brand entertainment like Star Wars, James Bond, etc., what movies do you consider formative to your taste, or maybe just classic films unrelated to franchises?
Oh shit.
You have to give me a second.
Oh, so like not big, like the AAA of like big Hollywood films.
Yeah, I guess we can't say. We can't say Star Wars, James Bond.
I can't say the Lego Movie. I love that movie.
You probably could, maybe.
I don't know. It's technically a franchise because there's other movies. My favorite. I have a favorite like indie-ish movie. I completely forgot the name of it.
Go ahead. Sorry, Andrew.
It's called Detachment. It's
Detachment.
Detachment. It's pretty good. It's about this teacher or the substitute teacher that goes into this like completely like destroyed community, and teaches these just terrible kids. It's very depressing, and it doesn't really have a happy ending. It has somewhat of a happy ending, but just like the frustrations that have to do with like teachers like now, because like teaching is the education system isn't good, spoiler alert. And it's just like teachers that care, but it's hard for them to do things when the people that hired them don't care. and then like the hierarchy of like schools and how they work. I don't know. It's a good film if you want to be depressed one day and then go to sleep. It's very draining emotionally.
I only have to take a look at like my recommendations on Mr. Brown's channel every week. It's such you wouldn't even think it's the same person talking about all this shit of superhero stuff. I love the movie Seven Psychopaths, which is brilliant, underrated comedy. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It stars Sam Rockwell and Colin Farrell. Absolutely brilliant, and Woody Harrelson. I suggested Road to Perdition the other week, which is a graphic novel adaptation. Paul Thomas Anderson's my favorite director ever. So you're talking about There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, which is one of the best movies in my opinion ever. And as far as classics, I mean, shit. Citizen Kane's brilliant. The Godfather, obviously. Deer Hunter is one of my favorite movies ever. Taxi Driver is brilliant. My favorite genre ever is probably the slasher movie genre, which is pure schlock goodiness. And it has its own tropes and beauty that you can watch and enjoy if you're into that kind of shit. And I sure as hell am. Like the movie Pearl that came out last year is one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. It's almost like a prestige horror movie. Mia Goth is absolutely one of the most dynamite performers that's out right now. Shit, man, I can go on and on. So I'm more interested in listening to what Platoon says because I don't even think he likes the movie, except Star Wars.
I am not allowed to say Star Wars though, or Indiana Jones,
right.
Presumably Jaws, or Alien, or Terminator, or any of the ones that are really popular for a really good reason. Like my film upbringing is incredibly conventional. I think, going slightly out of the way, it would be things like 2001: A Space Odyssey for sort of the conceptual work and also the technical work that goes into that. Jaws, just for the character work. Jaws is one of the best examples of character writing. Most sort of early to mid career Spielberg is, and like Close Encounters as well is very good. But growing up, I was bigger on books than films, so it's a peculiar position that I now find myself in, which does mean that my film education is probably nowhere near as good as it should be. But the writing analysis part comes much more from literature than it does from movies.
No, I think that's super cool though. Like we all bring something different to the table as far as like our perspective, but it's all about love of story.
Indeed it is. I think we've pretty much hit the end. If we have missed any, which we
I think
have.
there was one more. It just came in a couple minutes ago from Vinyl Morpheus again, actually. For $4.99. Thanks again. It's okay if it's a franchise. Tremors is a great film, despite
Tremors
being part of a
film.
tagging franchise. Yeah, Tremors is a great film. You're damn right.
Wes Anderson as well. Most things Wes Anderson has done, I like to varying degrees, but I think a really, really good example of how a director can leave a very distinctive aesthetic mark on a thing whilst not sacrificing story for his own ambition.
Have you heard of his new movie? It's coming out like in a couple months. I heard about it last night.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I think I'm too behind. I haven't seen the French.
It's called Asteroid City, and it takes place in the 50s.
No, I have not heard of that, but I'm now looking forward to it.
Me too. I heard about it last night, so I wasn't too far behind on like my Wes Anderson lack of knowledge.
Cracking. Well, yeah, if we have missed any others, we probably have, we'll try and comb back through and bring those up again in the next one. But I think that pretty much brings us toward the end of the show, unless there's anything that springs to mind that we have forgotten to mention.
I don't know. There's so many things going on, and I think we brought up everything that I wanted to today. So I think
fantastic. Mm-hmm. In which case, then, before we sign off, Andrew, would you like to give your plug? Where can people find you? What are you doing, and what can people expect from you next?
Sure. My channel is actually Andrew on YouTube. I'm actually Andrew with 3 L's on Twitter. I'm like the only one in this like circle of people that love Twitter, only because I can just troll. And then I'm currently working on a Guardians of the Galaxy video. about the lead up to Guardians 3, and then obviously I'm going to make a review of Guardians 3, and then future projects. I have a couple short films that, well, one I'm still working on from last year, and then I have another one that I just finished that I'm still working on the audio, and then I'll probably post that. And then I have another one for a class that I have to do, and I will probably post that when it's done. So
I'm looking forward to seeing those. No pressure.
I have a rough cut. I'll send it to you after.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I'm super interested to see what you do.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Fantastic. Well, that I think is a wrap. So thank you everyone in chat for sticking with us. Always great to have you. What's it Mr. Brown always says? I know he says something and then he says, as I always say, we love the chat. We're nothing without the chat.
We're
That's
nothing without the chat.
Yeah, although in a northern accent, which I'm not even going to attempt because I'm not drunk enough to do accents this week. Yeah, thank you very much, and we'll be back this time next week, and we should by that point have decided what our name is going to be, so look out for whatever we decide we're going to call it. Yeah, have a good evening, night, morning, wherever you are, and we'll see you in a week.
Bye.